ATB's The Hurling Pod.
With Bord Gáis Energy.
Hurling. It's anyone's game.
Welcome along. It is a third official live Hurling Pod. It is with thanks to Bord Gáis Energy. Hurling, it's anyone's game. Off the ball teaming up with the Senior Hurling Championship sponsors Bord Gáis Energy to uncover stories highlighting the positive impact that hurling is having on people's lives. For full competition details, which are running right up until the week of the All-Ireland final, visit bordgaishenergy.ie/home/BGE-GAA. What a day of hurling it's been. Sometimes the hurling gods are very kind to us. Clare into back-to-back Munster finals after Dermot Ryan's stunning long-range point helped the Banner to pip Cork by just a score in front of a full house at Cusack Park this afternoon. The last weekend is set up to be a Grand Slam finish now between Limerick and Cork, particularly following Limerick's draw against Tipperary. The result of the afternoon, though, was at Wexford Park, where two late goals from Niall Mitchell helped Westmeath to overcome Wexford, having trailed after just about 32 minutes of play by 17 points. It was a complete overhaul in the second half, and it leaves Wexford now at risk of falling into the Joe McDonagh Championship for next year. It means that Dublin are also assured of at least an All-Ireland preliminary quarter-final, and almost certainly it's going to be Kilkenny against Galway in the Leinster decider for the second year in a row after they registered wins against Dublin and Antrim respectively. It also means that James Skehill gets to go back to Thurles in a few weeks' time because the Galway Miners have reached the All-Ireland minor final. Skehill, how are you getting on?
I'm very well. How are you boys?
We're good. Paul Murphy, you had a weekend you had kind of mixed loyalties of what you're doing for the weekend, but you were blessed that, Saturday went away with Kilkenny getting a routine victory, and then you sit down to watch two absolute crackers of Munster this afternoon.
Yeah. Great weekend of hurling. Kilkenny, I suppose, routine enough victory over Dublin. Game kicked into life a few small periods, but today in Munster was just it was an absolute feast of hurling. And you know how many times the games kind of swayed back and forth today was just incredible. But there were so many bits to pick through, to pull through, to have a look at where Limerick are at, where Tipp are at. Tipp building on their outstanding performances so far, and then just a brilliant game in Ennis as well. So just, sometimes you build these things up too much and they don't live up to the expectations, but it was just a great day of hurling.
Yeah, I mean, Skehill, if we start with the first game of the day, which was on TV in the Munster Championship today, which was Cork against Clare, bonkers kind of game where it seemed Cork were going out of the game, particularly in the second quarter, found the goals in the second half. Patrick Horgan misses a penalty, but Dalton's there to slash it to the net. Then we can talk about the goalkeeping maybe on the Horgan goal, but Cork get themselves right back into it. It seems perfectly set up for a draw, and then Dermot Ryan decides, no, do you know what? I'm going to put Clare back into the Munster final again.
Yeah, and that was a ballsy shot too, Les. I suppose if you look at the Clare backs and you were to pick out the best shooter of them all, it's Dermot Ryan. It's Dermot Ryan. He's proven that over the last, couple of seasons that he's well able to take points from distance, and he's probably up there in terms of production this year with the likes of Jimmy Burns, minus the place balls obviously, and it was a ballsy shot. And then as well, when the last free was taken, who catches the ball? Yeah. Jimmy Ryan plucks it out of the air. That was a huge contribution too. But it was a humdinger of a game though, because it had kind of the feeling of the Cork and Tipperary game of 2 weeks ago, whereby Tipperary looked to dominate in periods, and you say Cork they're going to lose their edge here, and there could be a gap open up. I actually put in the group that the way Clare were playing at one stage, Clare could win this by 8, 9, 10 points. You know what I mean? And just Cork just kept. I've written down here, Cork just kept battling. But what I thought undone them. Great work ethic, don't get me wrong, but just some of their deliveries into the full forward line, they were just too 50-50, too into no man's land, and for all the possession they had. I don't know what the possession stats were, but for all the possession they felt like they had, they didn't come with enough returns, and I suppose they got robbed to the death. But look, it's a hard learn for them. It comes down to the wire now for next week, which is going to be a humdinger of a game again. A very difficult place to go. If I was to pick a place not to go, to try and get out of the group, it should be Limerick at this stage, especially after they're probably battle wounded as well. But yeah, what a weekend of hurling. Jeez, we needed that, Les. We needed that. I can't tell you one thing. We need that shot, a bit of adrenaline. So it's well and truly kicked the championship into gear.
Yeah, I mean, for the neutral, Murph, not to get ahead of ourselves here, but to have the situation where many of us thought Limerick would qualify for a Munster final, they're now looking just to make sure they're in the top three, whatever about reaching the final, because I think most people would bargain that Tipperary will beat a Waterford team with nothing to play for, but it keeps Limerick in a situation where they have to get a win against Cork in the last game at the Gaelic Grounds, which makes for perfect viewing next Sunday at 4:00.
It does, yeah, and it kind of, I suppose, you're looking at Limerick now. We weren't judging them off one performance really against Clare. And look, they only lost by a point. But what we're really looking to see, I suppose, was that would this Limerick team come out of the traps against Tipperary, turn on with all their swagger, with all their hurling skill that they have, and just revert to type, go back to the way they were. And it's apparent that they haven't, and they're not going to. So each week that goes by, like I've been part of teams there during years where, look, you weren't carrying injuries or anything, but maybe you suffered a loss against a team and you were kind of trying to build up the confidence again before the next game and try and get back to where you know you can be hurling with that, again, like I was saying, that swagger, that confidence where you really reach your potential. But, you know, there's so much of Limerick's performance today that you're looking at it going, there's just a lack of confidence here. There's, you know, maybe just a little bit of lack of belief, which happens during players' careers. But, you know, certain players not being on the ball, not having huge influence. Cian Lynch, you know, we just take it for granted for years now that he just influences the game and nobody can stop him. Gearóid Hegarty, you know, again, didn't have a real influence on the game. And so you're just looking at Limerick saying that, you know, they're being kept really honest at the moment, and they're really having to, I suppose, go to the well to somewhere they haven't been over the last few years and look for this confidence, look to steady the ship, look to now, I suppose, build back up that confidence and go at a tilt at a Munster or an All-Ireland. Like, you know, they just, it's an interesting place to see this Limerick team, considering 4 weeks ago, let's say, we were sitting here saying, how is anyone going to stop them over the next 2 or 3 years? So to be sitting in this position now, with the layout of the Munster table, it's just really incredible, and it's exactly where you'd want it. You actually probably couldn't write it because so many things have happened that, you know, it's kind of lofty thinking to think that you could make up this and that it would be as good as this. But it's excellent. It's excellent. And the only thing I suppose that makes it really good is the fact that Limerick are in the middle of the pack fighting for their lives at the moment.
Crack of the Ash, I think you massively overrate the amount of preparation that we put into doing this podcast with the joke here, obviously, because we'll get any preloaded questions for the lads like Joanne Cantwell had for Donal earlier. No, it literally does not happen that way. If I prepped them, they'd come out with prepared answers and that wouldn't be fun. But it was fun watching Donal double down, because I kind of thought originally he would be, you know, I'm going to come out here, I'm going to half apologise for this, I'm going to say, look, it was early in the morning, I was kind of making a bit of a joke. No. And it made for good TV. I don't know how you felt about it, Skehill. A lot of people were saying, oh, you know, he was been pushed too hard on it, or, you know, let him have his view or whatever. I thought, fuck it, you got to challenge him on it, because obviously the likes of Colin O'Rourke have been talking about it. So give him the chance to respond.
I think, to be honest, the statement was so, you know, was kind of brash enough, like, and it was so broad, like, in terms of you were nearly offending a lot of people with the way the statement was. But I was, I loved it. I loved it. I was cracking TV. Like, I think that's what is needed in the likes of RT in the Sunday game. They need, I wouldn't call it controversy, but they need just genuine, honest debate. So, like, he made a statement last week, and then what Joanne did was basically put him to task and see, does he still stand by the comments? And he did. And, like, fair play to him. I know he got a bit of a roast on Twitter with maybe how he came across, but he had to come across kind of bullish, because he was kind of, I'd imagine he was caught in the hop. I judging by his facial expression and his tone, that was not an orchestrated section of TV. That was just out of the blue that she hit him with. And I thought he dealt with it pretty well. Now, do I agree with the content of what he was saying? No, I don't. But again, I was sitting back as a happy customer watching this, let it all unfold.
Patrick Coleman's comment. I'll let you take this one up, Murph, and by all means stick comments into us in the YouTube or on the Facebook, and we'll get through as many as we can after the day we've just had. It's clear Limerick are past their prime. They're only hanging on. Their top players are gone. Example, Lynch and Hegarty, Finn injured. Clare and Tipperary are the form teams in Munster now.
No, I wouldn't agree with that. Like, I mean, past their prime. Again, you just have to go back and remember where we were speaking about this Limerick team 4 weeks ago. Like, some things have changed in that time. They seem to have a dip in form, but they're not past their prime. Like, the average age of this Limerick team is not a big age. And I do think we are seeing a blip in the radar. The big question at the moment, or blip in performance, I'd say, but the big question at the moment is, can they correct it in time to salvage this year, for example? Like, that's the way they'll be looking at it. Go, well, we want to win the All-Ireland. They have the players, without doubt. They have everything at their disposal. It's just between the ears at the moment now. It just seems to be like, you know, they know what their game plan is. Teams are coming at them really hard. They seem to be getting a bit frustrated. You know, you see Barry Nash getting sent off today, and it's you know, out of character for him to be reacting like that. But, you know, you could see niggle in the game, and Tipperary knew what they're at, in fairness to him. Tipperary said, let's, you know, poke at them here and see if they react to us, and they did. And it's been something Limerick has been trying to work at for the last few years, you know, not to maybe have a bit of a cooler head. But they're not past their prime, absolutely not. I mean, okay, let's say for example, this year, if they don't go and win the All-Ireland, fine. But that doesn't mean they don't come back next year like a juggernaut and take over for another 2 or 3 years. I think he can overhype these things a bit too much. Like, again, they lost to Clare by a point and they're after drawing with a really good Tipperary team. They're not where they were at real peak times over the last few years, but they're not far away from it either. So I absolutely would not write them off. It'd be at your pearl at this stage to write this Limerick team off.
Skehill, I'm not asking you to write them off in any way, but do we get to a point where Limerick are not considered All-Ireland favourites still at this point? Or even if it's a longer road, do you still think they're the favourites to lift Liam McCarthy right now?
I suppose on one side of your mouth, our mouths, we're probably looking at Clare and Tipp and going, geez, they're flying it, right? But Limerick have only lost to Clare by a point and they've drawn with Tipp. You know, so we're not talking about a massive or a huge gap in quality here. So, like, to say write them off, no way. At your pearl, as Murph said, like, are they Ireland contenders? For sure they are, because, like, they're battling fierce hard. It's just if the ball doesn't seem to be as fluid. You know, if you remember a score they got against Tipperary in the league semi-final a few weeks back, whereby I can't remember, the ball came over to Nash to Lynch, whatever, and the ball didn't hit the deck. For the whole passage of play, that just didn't happen today. You know, how many times do we see bad passes, going to Jimmy Burns' feet and going to Declan Hannon's feet and just didn't stick? And then the only thing I'm looking at them saying is they're probably lacking a bit of energy, a bit of buzz. Like, that's why you look at Cahill O'Neill, youthful exuberance. He was bouncing on the place. I was surprised to see him taken off, but I'd say he was taken off because he'd left everything on the pitch, and that's what Garage Hegarty is struggling for. He just seems to be struggling for that kind of that bit of buzz that has been in him for the last number of years. And the same kind of with Lynch. It's the same time every time Keane gets the ball, he's bottled up by 5 or 6 lads. That's because he's so good that they have to do that. And just if you have 2 players of that standing that are, I won't call them missing, but not producing what they've produced to the level they've produced in the past, Limerick are going to come down naturally. They are.
Why are they not producing the way they have, James? Then what is
you asked me a couple of weeks ago. I think maybe it could have been a public question too. You asked me, are Limerick? I think it was at the Clare game. Are Limerick coming back, or is everyone coming up? And it's everyone coming up, lads. It is because if you can't beat them, you have to join them and pass them out. And it's not as if Limerick have come back so far that we've reached parity now across the teams. No, it's everyone has improved so much. Like Tipperary, the way they played in this game today versus the way they played in the semi-final league was chalk and cheese. It was much more calculated, much more crisp. And I don't know, with Hegarty, I don't see him, like in years previous, you could see him in the 10, the 12, the 11, wing back. You wouldn't know where you'd find him. But today he just looked anonymous, like, and I had to actually count. When I saw Cahill O'Neill on the wall so much, I was looking for Hegarty to see, was he taken off? I thought I missed something. I said, did someone come on today after missing this? But he wasn't taken off. And then, again, indecision. And when you're lacking confidence and lacking a bit of flow, that's the shot. You see the shot he took in the second half off his left?
Yeah.
Where it was kind of a half. Was it a goal? Was it not a goal? Like, that's just put the ball over the bar in previously. It's such a tight game. It's not clicking from at the moment. Like, all he can do is just stay the course and keep on rocking, stay the course, and then hopefully the wheel will turn the right direction for him.
Today is not detrimental to them at all, Murph. They're still very much in contention into that last game against Cork to qualify for the All-Ireland series, even if it looks like their Munster crown is about to slip. At the same time, when Skehill has just explained, it's not really clicking for them. And we all had this expectation that they were going to have this mini 2-3 week period to get everything right and they were going to be hugely motivated going in against Tipperary. What's your assessment of what they actually produced today?
I suppose I'd imagine they had like savage sessions now in between preparing for Tipperary, but really trying to gauge where they were, had they improved. You were never going to know that until you stepped out in the field against Tipperary. The thing in Limerick's situation is that there's nothing like playing Limerick to focus the mind of the opposition team. Like everybody just brings their best performance when they're going against Tipperary, or they'd hope to bring it anyway. Like, I mean, we've seen Waterford perform really poorly so far in Munster, but today against Limerick, they put in a good shift, in fairness to them. Tipperary's performance today was, excellent. Clare's performance when they played them, excellent. They just have no room for, dropping away from the top because the teams that are playing them just bring their A game the whole time. I think the thing with Limerick at the moment is just there's a bit of hesitation with them, and that comes from a lack of confidence. You see Kyle Hayes going for a point, running up the side, nobody on him, and it drops harmlessly wide. Like, it wasn't even that it was wide, it rolled out over the end line. Things like that just say to me that, there's a little bit of lacking of confidence here. Keane Lynch blocked down in the first half. and he was caught standing. He didn't move with the ball, and he was on the back foot striking it. Like, just things uncharacteristic of Limerick. I think at the moment they're just trying to get that belief back into the panel. I don't think they've lost belief, or that they're, that their heads are in the bin altogether and they can't. It's just such a tough place. Like, they're looking to be excellent every day to go out. And good isn't good enough, unfortunately, at this level. And when you look at, like, if you look at in the first 10 minutes, Limerick or Tipperary didn't let them settle into the game. Like, Tipperary had 5 different scorers in 10 minutes, where I think at that stage Limerick had 2. So straight away, I'd say if Limerick had a bit of a doubt, Limerick were kind of going, these lads aren't going to give us an inch today. So that's the battle Limerick have at the moment. And I just think, we'll see over the next few weeks if they can get it back on track.
Yeah, good question here coming in from Enda Burke. So 8 goals conceded in 2 home games this championship, and probably Cleary missing due to injury for the final. What will Clare need to work on for the Munster final, Skehill?
I think, when I was noting here, I was impressed with although he wasn't on the ball as much as others, but his movement. Dara Fitzgibbon, he was playing obviously he had midfield on his back, but he was playing in the 11 channel on Conlon, and it looked like his job was to try bring John around the place and get him out of the 6 channel. Specifically in the first half, and some gaps opened up. So they got 3 goal chances in like 11 minutes, and so what it was just running, like pace. Like if you were to get at Clare, you need to attack their full backline. I think in my own opinion, right? I know people will argue this, but Clare's full backline is probably their weakest line, if you ask me. And so I think they're going to get targeted an awful lot. Like 8 goals concession at home, it's far too much, lads. It's far too much. And like you know yourself, and we've said it here before. If you're going to move forward in championships, like your championship structure is built on your defence. Like if you can keep out big teams and keep them nullified and keep them away from raising the green flag, you're going to go a long way to win in Ireland. But what they need to do, make their defence compact. And the thing is with Clare, how often do you see Jim Ryan, like Fitzgerald, going forward so much? They need to produce the cover at the back as well. So like that's why, like, you just need McInerney as well. You need to keep everything so compact. So if you have a team that is probably, I won't say struggling for pace, that's probably the wrong thing to say, but conceding goals, you just have to go back to brass tacks and make it really, really tight at the back, because the amount of goals they concede is pulling teams back into games against them. That game should have been outside, It should have been long gone outside, but conceding the goals in the manner they did. And it wasn't even, they weren't lucky goals. They were just runs weren't tracked, that Kingston wasn't tracked, you know what I mean? And that penetrative runs. And it's very hard to stop them. That's heads up. You know yourself, Murph, defender, like your head has to be on a swivel when teams are attacking you, because you have to be tracking the run. You cannot get caught ball watching. That's what Tony Kelly got in. Lads caught ball watching. And if you allow Tony Kelly in today's game 2 yards, maybe 3 yards separation, you're done. You're finished. Like that game is either a white or green flag being raised, So I just think in summary, Clare have to become far more compact at the back. They're shooting very well up front, but just try and close the gap a small bit between 6 and 3.
Paul Murphy even. Who's Paul Murray? Paul Murphy, a 4-time All-Star defender. Give me your assessment of Clare's full backline then, if Skell's saying it's their weak link.
Yeah, look, I mean, individually... Hang
on. Whoa. Not weak link,
right.
Not weak link. I said it's the weakest line, so I'm comparing them to others, okay?
I thought actually, to be honest...
So hold on a second, their weakest line then would be their weakest link.
To
follow the logic through here.
No, it's not. Line, okay?
I agree to disagree on this one, isn't it?
Paul, their weakest line then, go on.
I actually thought, to be honest, the cornerbacks came out with really good ball in front of their men in the first half. They actually, which is kind of a rarity in the current game at the moment, where long ball coming in and cornerbacks reading it and coming out in front, because usually teams are set up in such a way to deliver really good ball that there's not a window for a cornerback to get out in front. But I actually thought they did that really well today. And it was something really noticeable for them. But where I would see the issue is that individually, I think, they're really fast players and they can get to the ball and they make good decisions and they're calm. Most of the time they're calm on the ball. But as a unit, I would agree with Skehill. Like, there was times there in the first 10, 15 minutes particularly, like Clare kicked off into a really good start. But then once Cork came into it, there was gaps opening up big time in that Clare backline. And you could see the potential was there if the opposition was in the position to expose that. There was goals there. And when you look at the goal that Cahill got as well, like, you knew it was a goal for about 5 seconds because he got the ball and there was space and he ran and he said, okay, I'm going to carry it again just to make sure I can get the strike off. Like, that's a huge amount of space in the current game for a player to carry the ball through without someone laying a hand on him. And it was kind of this thing that the Clare full back line do have a tendency, as good as they are as individual players, they do have a tendency to, as Skehill is saying, ball watch. So watching where's the ball breaking, but there's space being exposed, and you see runners filling in that space. And, you know, all you have to do is look at their goals conceded. I know a large portion of that was in the Tipperary game, but that just points to, like, they're very charismatic going forward and they're full of heart, Clare as a whole, but they're undermined by their weakest link would be the fact that they create space, or they allow space to develop in their full backline, in and around their half backline. And I'd say if you go back to the first 10, 15, 20 minutes in today's game, regardless how Clare were playing going forward, pause the game at different times and the ball goes down and look at the space that's around their backline. And to be fair, even Limerick today as well, there's different times, and that was again uncharacteristic of Limerick over the last few years. We see them protecting the D, but when a team is kind of not fully confident in terms of what the system is at defending, at times they have a tendency to get pulled and dragged then. So I'd agree with Skehill, like you see the goals happening there, and only for they're really good going forward and they're really good during their purple patches. I think another team, when we're coming down the home straight of this championship, if it'd be a pity for Clare if it was their undoing, because they've been forewarned so many times during this championship that they should really, I suppose, focus on that and say, okay, look, we're really good going forward. We're doing great stuff here, but we've shown, whether teams have exploited it or not, we've shown we're leaving space open for teams to come at us there. So it's great to have, for Clare to have stuff to focus on. It's great that it's not their undoing at the moment, but it will become an undoing potentially later in the championship if they don't just shore it up there that small bit of the back.
I'm enjoying that our YouTube contributors are obviously very well watched when it comes to movies. This is the comparison here from The Bearded Pirate. Limerick are still Freddy Krueger. Throw in whatever you want, they still end up right beside you. And there is that possibility.
I watched that film when I was about 10 on my own. It frightened the absolute shite on me. I swear to God. I still can't watch it.
And I definitely saw one here as well. Yeah, River Wolf comparing Tipperary, The Empire Strikes Back.
Jesus, there's a lot of movie comments, isn't there?
Yeah.
Sure, Tipper always back. You know, every year, Tipper back. But where do you rate Tipperary, Scout? Because, like, all right, there was a couple of fortunate goals in the Clare game, but they beat Clare and Ennis. They probably should have beaten Cork and Porky Queeve, but for conceding a few goals. Things they can tighten up and improve on. And they've gone toe-to-toe with Limerick. And I think, importantly, they've now come out of a game against Limerick without, say, losing the second half. We talked about the run of fixtures where that has happened. What is Liam Cahill's Tipperary shaping up like now?
Like very good. Like I think that if you're to graph the progression from 12 months ago to now, like it's absolutely unreal. There's no other team comes near them in terms of progression. That's a fact. You know, some teams obviously regression are similar to that in the same level, but in terms of progression, there's something unreal. And like it's not just you're not depending on the old heads to a certain degree now. If you told me that Seamus Cannon wouldn't be starting, it wouldn't be as influential as he has previously, and Tipper still there competing with Limerick, I'd find it hard to believe, you know. But like, look at the contribution from Jake Morris. I actually took a note. I took a note in the first half, Will. So it's obviously, and I haven't, and Murph, you know, having played against Tipperary forwards and me having seen the Tipperary forwards, it's very difficult. Like for a goalkeeper, right? A lot of your job is to communicate and try to structure the back. You know what I mean? Structure everyone around you so you can just decrease space, watch runs. With Tipperary, it's actually very, very hard as a goalie to, I suppose, instruct your backs where to go because they move so well. Jake Morris, I just said I'd track him. How many positions he'd pick up the ball from 10 to 15? All of them. He picked up ball in 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15 in the first half today. Picked them up everywhere. So that was a sign that they were just going all sides. And like if you look at the Limerick structure in terms of their defence today, it was not like we've ever seen before. They had lads, they were left isolated. There was one stage in the first half where they had only 3 out of 6 backs inside their own half. We would never associate that with Limerick. And that's because I think Tipperary have played so well. Their ball efficiency has improved tenfold in a few months. Like how they're able to connect, build out with the back and then connect to the middle third and then move it on, let's say, to their big forwards. And the ball is sticking, lads. Like, I know we can talk about tactics and we can talk about fitness and all that is essential, don't get me wrong. But when the ball goes in and it sticks to Jake Morris, it sticks to Bo, it sticks to Skehill, that's down to individual quality and sharpness. We've associated that with Limerick for years. You associate it always with the great players, the TJs, Cannings, etc. Them lads make the ball stick. And just Tipperary's retention rate now is massive. And mix that, couple all that stuff there and fire it into the pot that Liam Cahill creates of sheer, utter will, determination and endeavour. Like all the Tip lads, they had the look of lads that are just completely shattered. Like they empty the tank. Like you ask a team, don't you, when they go out, empty the tank, lads. And sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. But Tip seems to just empty it out and they do. And it seems like they're very proud of the jersey, lads. It seems like they're on a mission. And again, how far can they go? Jesus, it makes me seem they're undefeated. You know what I mean? They've no losses. You know, they're scoring well. The sky's the limit, lads. Tipper back.
There you go. It's official. Tipper back. Mike Breen, with 2 Leinster men on the pod, sort of. So, right, Skehill, you're a Leinster man. You're advocate for the Leinster Championship. Go on, answer me this. How much longer are the GA and yourselves going to persist with the shambles of your championship is in comparison to the Munster one? Well,
Okay, is that Mike Breen? I'm presuming that's Mike Breen is playing today now.
No, I don't like to say
it. We've discussed this on numerous occasions. This is no fault of Leinster. This is absolutely no fault. Like, Munster won't even let him run their own counties. You know what I mean? To a championship. Like, it's because, again, the Munster Championship is the golden goose, and it is brilliant, and we love it, right? But you can't be looking at Munster giving out about how difficult it is to come out, and it is like it's a war of attrition in that province, and then be blaming Leinster for what we have, because we're all Leinstermen in this championship. It's like there's nothing we can do about it. Like, if you want to change it, no problem. Let's all mix together, and then there'll be some amount of screaming from Munster Council and Munster counties. So like, it's not our fault. Do you know what I mean? Like, we can only play. I'm speaking specifically now for Galway, Kilkenny. Play what's in front of you, lads. And if other teams are up to the quality, so be it.
It might not be a standard thing, Murph, but this is probably not the day to denigrate the Leinster Hurling Championship when Westmeath have just beaten Wexford for the first time since 1940.
Yeah, exactly. You know, I know a lot of the talk will be about what happened in Munster today, but you know, there is glass ceilings being shattered in Leinster at different times. You know, we maybe have to wait around for a while for them to happen. But, you know, we didn't expect Wexford, or we didn't expect Westmeath, despite drawing with Wexford last year, to go and turn them over in Wexford Park. And you especially weren't expecting it at half time. But, you know, it is one of those stories that it's, I suppose it gives you hope, really. Now, I know for Wexford people this evening, it's not what they want. And there is an element of self-destruction here in it for Wexford as well. But nevertheless, you know, so often we've sat here and spoke about how well Joe Fortune speaks after Westmeath games, and now he doesn't want moral victories; he wants real victories. And you know, the steps that Westmeath are taken to try and I suppose step up. And again, with not an enormous amount of clubs compared to the counties they're trying to compete against. I mean, there's so many aspects there, and football as well in Westmeath. So for that performance today, like, if you contrast that, absolutely okay, Leinster isn't on a par in terms of entertainment with Munster. But if you look down into Munster and say, where will Kerry have that opportunity to kind of go and leave a real marker and something they can point to and say, well, Jesus, you know, wasn't that a great day? Are we making strides going forward? Will Westmeath have that today and have it in Leinster? So, look, there's different measurables you can measure it against. Absolutely, it's not as entertaining or as competitive for a lot of matches. But Westmeath's victory today, it's I think as a neutral, it's a really positive win. You're delighted for Westmeath, you're delighted for the panel of players, and it's something for them to cling to now for, you know, going forward, that like that's what they're capable of. And look what we can do when I suppose when things go right for us and we put up in a really good performance.
Yeah, go on.
Just as obviously Leinster only came into my crosshairs when we joined it, right? And it's been relatively quiet, you know, the talk back in only for the last couple of years because Munster has been so competitive. Like, I just did a quick Wikipedia search. Kilkenny have won 74 titles in Leinster. Next up is Dublin, 24. So this isn't today or yesterday. No, you know what I mean? No. There's 50 titles in the gap between first and second. You know? So this has always been a GA structure thing, or, you know, there's mass differences in quality in Leinster with Kilkenny. Pure domination. And is it because the Munster counties feel like, I suppose if you take the 5 counties there, 3 of them are coming out, obviously, and they're getting a bit hot-tempered that a third Leinster county is coming out when they feel that third Leinster county would lose to the third Munster county or even the fourth Munster county. That's the bones of their debate, isn't it?
Yeah.
So what they're looking for probably is, how do we get 4 teams, if not 5, in Munster, including the Ireland Championship? That's what they're after. If that happened, everyone would stay quiet in, because, you know, I think actually that happened, you wouldn't get the quality of games that we have. It's because everything's on the line in Munster and only 3 teams come out that you get the production. You get what we saw today as 2 of the best games we've seen in recent years. Put it that way to you. You know what I mean? And but if all the teams had safety nets, you know, you wouldn't get that production. So you can't have it always, I think.
Yeah. No, I was just going to give you this one, Skehill, on a similar point, which comes in from Pat Wall, 1979. Is the standard in Leinster going to go against Galway and Kilkenny? No competitive matches until the knockout stages. Munster teams will be primed and battle hardened. Like, I don't know if that's a two-way street. In that last year, we talked about how Clare had put so much effort into where they were in the Munster final, and then Kilkenny beat them in the semi-final. But is there the possibility that Galway and Kilkenny, who are almost certainly into the final now, barring some kind of incredible Dublin result against Galway scores-wise in the final round, is there a chance they might come in a little bit undercooked into an All-Ireland semi-final or quarter-final?
I think there's probably pros and cons to that situation. It's like we have a debate here at home. I do always do. If you're coming out of your group in your club championship, and is it better to go into a preliminary quarter-final or quarter-final? My route is always go the fastest route possible, head the fastest. But then some people argue, well, you'll be cold coming in. And like if you look at last year, and the proof's in the pudding. Kilkenny got to the final, and then Galway got to the semi-final. Obviously, taken down a Munster county in the process, and they obviously beaten by the Munster county semi-final, burning a couple of points. So like signs would tell you that they will come in. Battle hardened is probably not the phrase that you use. I would expect a very, very good Leinster final, to be honest. I think that'll be a chalk and cheese what we saw below in Nolan Park, and then they land into that, which will be a precursor for our Ireland run. But yeah, I know it's tough on the Munster counties. I get that, but like Clare have 3 weeks break now, haven't they, before Munster final? I think that's on the 11th of June, is it?
Yes.
Like
yeah.
So they've got a good break, like, and in between that Galway and Kilkenny will play 2 more games. So look, there's pros and cons to it all. But if I was to give me my preference, I would happily be in the Galway Kilkenny camp, coming through Leinster, having a really good cut off each other in the Leinster final, and then moving on. I wouldn't like to be coming out of Munster at this stage.
Yeah, Gary Farrell's assessment is correct about the relegation situation. So if 2 results would have to go against Wexford to go to the Joe McDonagh, but Kilkenny win, and if Antrim were to win in Mullingar against Westmeath, then Westmeath would be ahead of Wexford on head-to-head, and it would be Wexford who would go down to the Joe McDonagh. Antrim need to win, though, because they're a point behind Wexford currently and will be behind Wexford on head-to-head. So it would take a sequence of results to happen. But that's one of the things, Paul, about Leinster, is that threat that's there, which Waterford could well end up on 0 points, no relegation. Yeah. But Wexford could end up now, after a bad summer, potentially going to the Joe McDonagh.
Yeah, absolutely, and I mean that's a cruel blow for a team. Like, and if you consider that, oftentimes, let's say Tipperary last year, people were saying once we knew they were out of Munster that okay, they're going to reassess and prepare for next year and so on, and that's you have the luxury of doing that in Munster. Whereas in Leinster, if you slip up, there's a severe punishment for it there. So yeah, look, there is a trade-off. You could look at certain strands of what the championships provide, but in terms of the downsides there, like that's a big punishment for Wexford if it happens.
Absolutely. I mean, again, people have been very strong from a Wexford perspective, and I can understand from the position that they were in. It's a fantastic one from Martin Furlong there. Leinster team getting relegated, making the point that could, potentially even out a little bit, that risk is there, which is not there in Munster currently. Also, there's a few people making the point about how bad this is for Wexford. So Mark Tobin, who is a Wexford supporter, biggest comeback ever in Championship hurling history today. Sorry, State of Wexford Hurling, forget 1940. The 1940s, the Westmeath stat about the victory, but for Wexford, this is, I think, as dark as it gets, really. To give it a credit, though. This is
a tough week for Wexford.
Yeah, very tough. Yeah.
This is what a Wexford man in charge of Westmeath, Joe Fortune, had to say after the game, because understandably the journalists afterwards were saying this is a fantastic scalp. This was his take when he was asked about whether it was a scalp for Westmeath this afternoon.
I'm fed up with this scalp thing. It aggravates me at times as well. The lads put in a serious effort. Leashes and Westmeaths and Offaly's and all of this world, and we're fighting on the flat of our back to stay in Leinster, and yet there's other counties there that are not, that are. It's hard at times to take. I don't get any pleasure coming down here. My mum and dad are living 20 minutes down the road, and it's hard as a Wexford man at times when you turn around and you hear that support they have, like, and they need to galvanise that support because, geez, it's incredible. But the people that travel from Westmeath today, it's emotional. I'm not going to lie to you. It's hard to stay a man in a situation like this where you're kind of going, like, it means an awful lot to me. And I probably doubted myself a small bit over the last couple of weeks. But look, it is what it is, and we go again now next week.
So there you go. That's what Joe Fortune, the Westmeath manager, had to say afterwards. It's a shot in the arm, Murph, for Westmeath Hurling particularly, because they've been scrapping all year, didn't have a good year in Division 1A, but got themselves together, beat Laois in the relegation playoff. They've now put themselves in a very strong position to stay up in the Lee McCarthy for 3 successive seasons. When you take all those blows along the way and you have bad days, you have to give them a lot of credit on a day like today.
Yeah, you do, absolutely. And I suppose beating Wexford and staying in Lee McCarthy, but staying in it during a round robin phase on your own terms is another huge measurable for Westmeath to be able to say. And like, they have taken a few beatings, and I know Joe Fortune has come out and said it like that. we don't want moral victories. And, even he was speaking very passionately there that we don't want to refer to it as scalps. Like, they want to see themselves on a par with teams. This is a huge step towards that, though, as well, because, next time we turn around and we have conversations about Westmeath and, maybe teams taking them for granted, like, you have a serious game here where you can point to that they went down to Wexford Park at a time when Wexford really needed a win. And we're taking for granted that this was going to be a win. 17 points down at halftime. And look, I said it already again. Like, I mean, there is an element of implosion, of course, here for Wexford. And like, there's a full other conversation to be had about Wexford and where is Wexford hurling at the moment. But Westmeath can only play what's in front of them, and it's an enormous win for them. And they've been, they've been I suppose a shining light in the Leinster Championship and how they keep going about their business, keep putting in performances. Like, unfortunately, against Kilkenny this year in the first match, like, they were without 5 players, and they just couldn't go and maybe have a performance where they could come away from it like saying, we did this well, we did that well. It was a tough day for them, but today is a day that they can cling to now and say, and the supporters, as Joe Fortune said, like, the supporters, for them to go on the road and driving home tonight of a Sunday evening, hoping to watch the Sunday game and see Westmeath victorious down at Wexford Park. Like, that's huge, and it's brilliant, and it's brilliant for the players as well, because look, they've put in a lot of hard miles to get to this stage. So it's a good news story in Munster Hurling today.
Yeah, hopefully there's decent cameras this time around, because remember the Derek McNicholas goal last year, and
Nokia 3210, wasn't it?
It may well have been a 3210. Olive Cross, one of the comments I took up there as well. Westmeath up to 5th in the power rankings. I would say wait until Wednesday morning and you'll see.
Your power rankings are so all over the place, right? Worse than my draft, okay? So, look I suggest we move on fairly swiftly about the power rankings now.
All right, we have a problem, Skehill. I don't think Galway staying in 6th place. But if I put Westmeath into 5th, maybe I can use that as an argument to keep Galway in 6th at the moment. Because it seems I've pissed everyone off west of the Shannon, including you.
It is, yeah. And if I saw you that day. But can we touch on Wexford for a second? Because it's like a theme. Do you remember the last few weeks we've been saying, it goes right back to the first league game they played Galway and they conceded 10 in a row. Like, I know, I'm only taking the information off what's the score, and it's a pity we couldn't see the game live or even have a platform to see it. But so Wexford scored a point in the 61st minute. That gave them 2-21. And then Westmeath scored 2-4 out of play to put the 3 points up. That is absolute and utter implosion. That is complete lack of game management. That's the same theme. When they get beaten in the same manner on a run. So that's going to be a terribly hard pill to swallow for Wexford.
Like, if you look back though as well, Skehill, like Galway played them. We spoke about it in the league. Galway played them down below Wexford. What happened? 10 scores on the hop.
10 points.
And it's come back to roost.
Killer, absolute killer. You know what I mean? And like, I suppose they'll head down. Their heads are down. I say, and the Kilkenny, like, am I right in saying, Murph? Kilkenny will want to absolutely bury them next week. Simple as that.
Yeah,
I would as a Galway man. I would. I want to bury them.
No, absolutely. Look, I mean, there's a rivalry between Kilkenny and Wexford, and there's no doubt Wexford, beating us in Leinster finals in 2019, and you can guarantee Kilkenny. We heard about it then. Kilkenny won't be going out into this match thinking that we're going to be getting ready for a Leinster final, and they'll want to go down there and like establish, I suppose, a mental dominance there that we might have had our ups and downs, but we've bounced back. Whereas, look, it is tough on Wexford. It's very tough on Wexford, and it's going to be a big thing for the Wexford players to try and pick themselves up. Like, that match will be hurled purely on pride. It'll be an enormous amount of heart will have to be pulled out. It'll be a huge mental battle. There's going to be a lot of spirit going to have to be shown to win that. But Kilkenny,
be honest here, Murph, as well. Kilkenny are going to be out to try and bury them.
Oh, bury them, yeah. Well, that'll be it. Absolutely. Like, the border down here, the people down there, you can guarantee down around New Ross direction, Mulnavat, all around that direction, they'll want to see this match going one way. Well, the Kilkenny people will, and that is, put Wexford in a very sticky situation.
You do too.
I'll say nothing.
Fair point here, Skehill, as well, to take up on the Wexford coming in from Pat Wall. So Darr Egan will probably lose his job after this year, but is losing a 16-point lead. And it was 17 at one point in the first half on the manager. Players need to take a lot of blame here, surely. Well, especially when they have 2-14 up after 32 minutes. They finish on 2-22. They concede those goals. They miss a penalty. They don't take advantage of being a man up. Mm-hmm. That surely can't be all on Darr Egan.
No, I see. It's very hard. Like, sometimes we get, I suppose, influenced by soccer. How they put so much, influence on a team's performance on the manager. And maybe that's accurate in a professional environment when you're there day in day out. But like the players have to stand back, and if I was to kind of equate or divide responsibility, for me it's 90% the players. That's for today. Now I'm not going to say how they ran into today, how they prepared, etc. But like it's been a tough couple of years now for Darragh Egan, lads. And the truth be told, right, he probably will lose the job. He probably will. Yeah. I think, as far as I'm aware, it was 2 years with the option of a third, wasn't it? And it's hard to see. I think so. Yeah. It's hard to see how the Wexford County Board will look at the last couple of years and go, yeah, there's been progression, because there hasn't. Like, that's the trouble, and they'll probably be looking elsewhere. And that's the harsh reality of top level sport. If a team doesn't perform when they've got resources and they perceive themselves to have the players, someone's going to get the chop, and it looks like Darragh Egan and his management team. So it's a tough place to be in Wexford at the moment.
To Connor's point, Limerick off the top in the power rankings. I am actively considering it right now, and I see a few people saying that Clare and Tipp should now be in the top spots, potentially. Let's have a think about it.
It's so strange, though, isn't it? It's so strange how like people are just discounting Limerick. Limerick after drawn. For me, it was a soft free at the end of the day. I thought Stack shouldn't have given that free. Not first Stack's referee, wouldn't it? Mm-hmm. He shouldn't have given that free. I thought Limerick won by a point. Do you know what I mean? And here we are, like, and Clare only beat them a point. Like, everyone just calmed down.
Weren't Tipp very hard done by Skehill, though, for the potential goal chance? That looked like a legit hand pass.
Perfect hand pass. Yeah. Just it's put down to human error, lads. I thought a couple of decisions today were very questionable. Like the Barry Nash red card was not, like, I can see what he was doing, probably how he was trying to get the ball off Dan McCormack, but was that a yellow card? Not for me. That wasn't it. Like, if you're giving a man a second yellow and it's going to be a red, geez, they want to be a right yellow. They want to be a right one, like. And for what Nash did to McCormack, I didn't think he constituted yellow at all. So that was a big call again. So his performance was questionable. But again, if you're a Tipperary fan, aren't you aggrieved with that hand pass? Because they were through.
But like the other side you have to say is, like, with Barry Nash's one is in the similar vein that you're saying with the hand pass, it's human error, and you get one look at it. Like, Sean Stack got to look at Barry Nash swinging his hands down at I can't remember, was it Tynan or no, it wasn't Tynan, Conor Bowles or someone. It was Cormac, sorry, yeah. Cormac, yeah. Like, he just saw a swipe towards his head, and it did connect. Like, I mean, it was okay, it was harmless enough, and you can get into the debate afterwards, was it yellow or not yellow? But again, like that, in a very heated part of the match, Sean Stack saw a swipe at a player on the ground. Like, you can't kind of, I don't think you can discount it, and I don't think it was a harsh yellow, to be honest, because, like, if you're in a yellow card position, though, Skehill, like, if you're in a yellow card position as a fucking corner back, whatever about being the corner forward, you are on high alert that you're on a yellow card. So, like, I mean, it does make a difference, the number on your back, because you see Carl Barrett getting booked in the second half there, and, like, you could see straight away, it's in his head, he's going, right, Jesus, I'm on a yellow. So now I can't really be cynical or pull down a player or whatever, like, Yeah. So it should have been in his head that the slightest thing here now will get me sent off, So
see, I would always question guys, like, if they go in and do something kind of erratic, like, again, Tim O'Mahony today for the last free when he got turned over on the Tony Kelly dive. Let's just say what it is, whether it's the dive, right? I was saying, Jesus, in that moment, what are you doing? But, like, Sean Stack, let's say, for the hand pass, he's completely on his own there. He's got to make that decision, okay?
Yeah.
Error. But for the St. John Offaly, I just think he went in far too fast. Do you not think he didn't confer with linesmen, umpires? He just went in, gone. So, like, he was pretty certain, like, pretty certain. Tricky one.
A lot of people still question Galway in sixth. Just hold on till Wednesday. Let's see who we put Galway at that point. By the way, I tried to caveat, and I'm pretty sure I said this to Skehill as well, and it wasn't just to try and get him back on side. I was like, no, genuinely, I think Galway will get to the All-Ireland semi-finals this year. It's just very difficult when a lot of the Munster teams have put in really impressive performances above them. It's like, do I drop Tipperary for drawing against Cork? Do I punish Cork for, in that case, drawing against a Tipperary team who'd already beaten Clare?
Well, hold on a second now. Hold on. Right, okay. Where to Kenny in your rankings?
I had them second. Well, I actually put them down to third, and then I put them back up to second.
Exactly. You put them back up to second because he came at you. That's why. He came at you to watch that group, right? And you said, "Do you know what? I'll keep this man on side, a fellow Leinster man. Will he embrace me? I'm Leinster as well. No, embrace me."
You were too busy with the Lambs. If you had got in quickly enough, you probably could have argued Galway back up to fifth or fourth position. But you saw it far too late. Martin Furlong actually made a good point as well about Wexford's 20s. I know they lost the final midweek in Carlow, but there's particularly some very exciting forwards on that team. But the damage would be, and this is a fair point, if they were to go into the McDonagh Cup. Well, obviously that's a chance to blood those players who are coming through, because we've spoken a few times about it, Murph, that this Wexford team, an awful lot of them are still there from the core group from the Leinster success in 2019. And it will come to a point probably when some of these start to exit. And if you are bringing those players through, if you're the Wexford County Board of Management at the moment, you want to be able to offer them senior championship hurling as opposed to be bringing them into the McDonagh, because no matter how talented your players are and how much game time they're getting, they will be playing at a level just a little bit lower when they're getting introduced in. I think it's vital for Wexford for that crop to keep them at senior level.
It is, yeah. Like, I mean, it's vital to have the mantle of being able to say you're playing senior hurling. But, like, to be honest, let's say hypothetically, if Wexford do go down to Joe McDonagh, like, I don't see them spending very much time there. I'd see it as being a year and popping back up. I would actually have more sympathy with the players of the likes of Lee Chin and Dee O'Keefe and these lads, because, like, every year they want to be playing Liam McCarthy. They don't want to be playing Joe McDonagh. And if you were to pick who will it be more of a negative impact on, the players that are coming through from under 20 or the lads who have gone to the well sometimes for Wexford over the years and maybe only have so many times more to go to it, I'd say it's for those lads. Like, yeah, absolutely you have to introduce new players, but it won't do the under 20s a whole lot of harm going hurling Joe McDonagh for 1 year, as we would imagine it would be, and popping back up to Lee McCarthy. Whereas, you know, mentally, it's a big dent on Wexford's reputation. It's a big dent on, you know, they're proud hurling people, and also just for the crop of players there. Like, because potentially, if Wexford had a really good run with the crop of players they have, I mean, they could reach an All-Ireland semi-final. Like, I mean, it's not so long ago, 2019, they were in an All-Ireland semi-final. But the big question now is where Wexford will be looking through and sifting through the ashes of this one is, where have we gone wrong and how have we drifted so far? And, you know, I've even seen some people, like, from what I hear, Darragh Egan's an absolutely excellent manager and people speak so positively about him. I think there'll be more will come out of, well, where is Wexford hurling in general? You know, underage hurling, we see that, okay, under 20, happy days, but there's lots of strands there that you have to look at to go, are we competitive enough across the board at club level to produce a really good senior inter-county team? Like, because one thing I would say in Kilkenny certainly is that it's so competitive that you'll keep producing good players for a senior level. Wexford may have to look at their club level and go, okay, do we have a few individual teams going really well here, but is the cut and thrust of our normal club championship, is that where it needs to be? I think also as well that, let's say, for example, and not ruling Darragh Egan out of the job at all, I think Wexford people will also be looking at, you know, a Wexford person maybe for the job. You know, for so many years now, they've gone with someone outside the county. They've gone with, you know, and if you look at the likes of, you know, a lot of counties, they do it for different reasons why they go outside the county, but there may be a push towards now, well, you know, let's take charge of this. Let's try and implement someone who's maybe been involved in the underage structures, someone who has wore the Wexford jersey, whatever it is, and maybe that there's a cultural thing that they need to bring back into Wexford hurling. There's lots of stuff. There is lots of stuff. And when we say with Limerick, for example, that we're not going to jump the gun, let's say with one performance or two performances, you do have to kind of say with this year, go back to the Clare match down in Wexford Park, like an absolute hammer. And, you know, so many performances with Wexford this year has been like, you know, the panic button kind of has to be hit soon enough. So, look, it's a tough thing. And I don't think anybody could sit down this evening now and point to one thing in Wexford where you go, that's the problem. I think there's going to probably be a few things that they have to sift through. But look, 1 year Joe McDonagh, I know I went a long-winded way about it. I don't think it hurts the under 20 players too much, but I think there's a core group of Wexford players there that have hurled at a serious standard for years that they do not want to step down to Joe McDonagh for next year.
Yeah, Stephen O'Connor, I don't mean that in a disparaging way. Why speak disparagingly of the McDonagh Cup? Look at Offaly coming back. I would actually make the opposite argument, is that once Offaly went out of the top flight, they actually went progressively downward before coming back up. They went into the Christie Ring, and now it's taken them another couple of seasons to get out of the McDonagh, and I would say no guarantee they beat Carlow at all. In fact, I think Carlow are probably narrow favourites going into that final this coming Saturday, and then you could end up with a shark of a team if Wexford were to go down. And next thing, a few years outside the top flight becomes half a decade, and it can just become a recurring theme that you bring your standard down a bit lower. I think Wexford, with the group of players they have right now, should be aspiring to be in the Leinster Senior Championship. I love the McDonagh as a competition, but I think for Wexford, who've been a bit above that, it could potentially drive their standards down if they end up going down. And some players could well step away if they get relegated as well. Also, fair point, Martin C., and you are correct. Speaking of the 20s, surely you can't get this far into the pod without mentioning Offaly, Will. Yeah, I'm trying to keep the powder dry in this one because, you know, Skehill can talk about how Galway.
We'll let you have your moment. You can have your moment here. I know you're the balanced facilitator of all this, but we know the WhatsApp has been hopping all week now, Will, in fairness.
William, the floor is yours.
Have your moment.
Look, it was a killer because I had to work. I was in the office on Wednesdays. We had a few lads on holidays, so it just wasn't really an option to go to Dr. Cullen Park at the week. And I was just so impressed with Offaly's performance because as Adam Screeney, who scored 112, and again, try and keep the hype down on that young lad at the moment at 17 years of age, but 15 players have come off the All-Ireland minor final team for Offaly last year. This team is way ahead of their development where this was expected. I think the hope was that in 2 to 3 seasons' time, they would contest provincial finals. It's Offaly's first provincial final win since 2000 as well. I saw some people saying, calm down, Offaly lost the All-Ireland final last year, yada, yada, yada. And you're like, lads, if a county who hasn't won something at this grade for 20-odd years can't enjoy a night like that, and 11-odd thousand people in at the game and the scenes that were there at full time, I think you may as well give up following sport at that point. But really, really promising. There's lots of good hurlers on that team. Again, I don't know, Skehill, how you feel, but you've watched these guys a few times as well. Like, Adam Screeney, the first thing that has to be said, as much as he's now been top scorer in every major final he's played for the last 2 years, the challenge will always be where his physical development comes from here, because he is very small in stature. Yeah. He scored 2 remarkable points over by the sideline, but you have to wait and see how these lads are going to work out when they get a little bit older. He has to fill his body out a little bit.
Like you use the word remarkable, I use the word ridiculous. Like even to take it on. First of all, he's inside the 14-yard line, okay? Let's get that straight, right? At the 14-yard line, and he pops the 2 of them over. Yes, he's light. Yes, it looks like he's swimming in the jersey. But he still puts in hits, like. He still tackles hard. You know what I mean? Like, he's got a ferocious attitude. And I was super impressed with the way he spoke in the interview after, for picking up his man the match award. Like, he seemed like a very, positive kind of go-getter type individual. And that's I'm not trying to build him up too much, don't get me wrong, because he's a kid, like, that's what he is. But it's like that's what the foundation of good teams are built on, is on good characters. Like if you look at what Ronan O'Gara said yesterday, sorry lads, for La Rochelle, he goes, get good people in the building and then you work on their competence after that. So like if you have good characters, like good people, let's say, you can build them. So you look at your man, was it Mitchell got sent off in the 41st minute, Will?
Yeah, Charlie Mitchell, and like you're thinking your captain has gone off and their regular senior player, this is them in deep shit. And
they come back to win the game. That is just complete. Again, I used the phrase a minute ago, heart and endeavour. Like you can't train that. Like you can put the dog in the fight, but you can't put the fight in the dog. And like when you see lads who stand up, especially carrying the age profile they do, like Dan Ravenhill, no one's talking about him. He's serious operator, like him. Like there's a lot to build on. Now, if you look, I think someone put up there, Murph, during the week, ironically, it was 2006, the minors semi-finals. We played Tipperary and we played Cork. And I was looking at the programs and I was thinking, just a lot of seniors, regular seniors came off those 4 panels, but in particular, Tipperary had I think 8 or 9 guys who featured. So it's not beyond the realms of possibility to say that, the foundation for Tipperary hurling was built, or carried through in that minor team. It was. And it still is to a certain degree, So like you look at this Offaly team, and yes, they're only 17, 18, some of them, but like in 2 or 3 years' time, this is where a team can get built, and not just for the present moment, but for like all you need is in a county like Offaly, who have been successful in the past, to get back there is a bit of traction and a bit of momentum. And now it's the snowball effect. It'll get bigger and bigger. Consider the football last year, now the 20s, the minors, etc. It'll keep rolling. And if they win the McDonagh, it's a positive out. It's just all positive. Now they're going to come up against a ferocious hard test against Cork. Serious hard test. And but the thing is, Offaly people, I put into the group, I said, who in the name of God is minding Offaly? Because the whole lot of you are blowing it. In Carlo.
I was actually driving home against the traffic on the way home from Dublin afterwards. It was remarkable. Even at nearly midnight, there were still cars just kind of trailing back up into, particularly Kilcormac, where they've got like the mainstay of the team. And the Faithful Fields was still open at around about midnight when I was coming home, and there was just.
Do you know what's gas, Will?
Go on.
We were talking yesterday. We're obviously on before you for the minor finals, on before the 20 final. So going through little nuggets yesterday after the game. We were discussing. There's going to be 20,000 people at this game. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. I think that's what they're going to do with this. Like they're going to be all Offaly. So you might shout for us as well, really.
Well, why not? We can combine as Leinster champions here against the Munster opposition. But again, like a lot of people pointing out here, that Cork have got a very young team at the moment. I think the way this game has moved back, so originally this was going to be a double header with the Joe McDonagh Cup final this coming Saturday, which would have put Cork in a bind because their players who are eligible for under 20 right now, I don't know whether you parachute them back in. I'll ask you about that in a moment, but they wouldn't be able to play. But if it's on the Bank Holiday weekend, which it is now on the Sunday, is a double header, they can potentially play their under 20 players who are on the senior Cork panel, which might work out well for them. Offaly get Charlie Mitchell, Cork get their players. I would hope, Murph, on that point, that this might be the end of the 7-day rule, because people are now aware of how ridiculous it is that Charlie Mitchell was allowed to play in a lower graded competition, but yet if you play in a senior championship, your guys can't play for a week. Like, we should be encouraging as many of these elite players to play under 20 as we possibly can.
Yeah, absolutely. Like, and just for even seeing where they are and kind of how far, to an extent, how far they are ahead of their own peers, I suppose. But like, I would just think to myself, what a pity if, like, in 2008 we won the under-21 All Ireland, and TJ and Richie Hogan, these lads were on the team, but they wouldn't have been allowed to play if that was the case, or potentially wouldn't. I can't remember the time difference. I think it was the following week after the All Ireland, but like things like that. Like, I mean, they don't. Let's say even if we did win that All Ireland, like, they're kind of cold bystanders on the sideline, which is just such a pity. And you see other under-20 players speaking about it now at the moment. I mean, we saw the Cork player speaking the other night just after their match, just that they want those players standing with them. They want those players in the dressing room, and it's almost like being punished for being such a good player that you can't play within your own age group. It is a pity. It is a pity. And the other thing you have to think about is, will counties have counties left All Irelands behind them because the fruits of their underage success has been like, producing really good players that step into a senior team. You now can't play them at under 20, for example. You now don't win the under 20 All Ireland because you haven't got your best players who are 20 years of age on the pitch. I mean, it just sounds mad when you break it down. And the bottom line is, if you ask those players, do you want to play it? They'll all tell you, yeah, we want to play it. So it's like you're protecting them from something that they didn't ask to be protected from. So it's just, I think anybody you speak to, it just has to revert back to allowing these players play.
Skehill, I won't let you not have your moment on the Galway Miners too. Congratulations. I was watching the games yesterday afternoon.
My moment.
Tell you what, your boys love going for goals. There's a real kind of clinical edge about that team.
Yeah, well, so we have to, like, do you know what I mean? I suppose because, again, quality opposition. I know it doesn't look like it, right? I know in the last couple of games the winning margin has been double digits, but like that, we went in yesterday probably 8 or 9 points up at half time, and it genuinely felt, honest to God, it felt like we were 1 point or 2 points up. That's the way the game was. We got a couple of goals. I'd probably say against the run of play, to be honest, but like just they came at right times. God, it's a good sign of a team, I suppose, when you get goals at the right time, but you don't deserve them. If that makes sense. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like you're knocking on the door all day and you get a goal. Like, these both goals came against the run of play. So yeah, look, we got through. On to the next one. Simple as that.
Now, we'll tell you what, talk about playing the team down. I want you to give a bit of hype, bit of excitement here. You're up just one step closer to an All-Ireland title potentially here.
Well, they're a good group, I will say, and I've been surprised with how fast they've picked up the coaching. I thought that, let's say, this might take a period of years to try and implement kind of a game plan or style into them. But like they're like sponges. They hang on every word you say, and that's why you'd be always very cognizant of what messages you give them, because they'll take it all in. And in fairness to them, they're doing well at the moment, I'd say. But again, Sean O'Halpin and Kieran Murphy came to the dressing room yesterday, and they said there's no cup on the table after semi-finals. That's the same message we're passing on. So it's keep rocking until the job is done. Simple as that.
Yeah. Let Nessa build the hype up here. I presume this was aimed at the screeny comments from earlier. Aaron Ireland is better, in my opinion. Well, he looks incredible. Let's be fair, Skehill. You can't not hype this young lad.
Yeah, you can't not hype him. Like you'd say, if you're looking. Well, for me personally, I'm looking at minor teams, 20 teams, and I'm saying, right, how many of those guys can we potentially, or certainly should I say, extract into a senior squad? And I'm looking at him going, yeah, he should be one of them. Like, all going well, provided he keeps on. Like, he's a very, 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 very nice young fella, head and shoulder type person. There's no airs of grace about him. A humble kid. So like you would say that he should go places. Like he has the tools to, he has the potential to. It's just that if he keeps growing them and keeps nurturing them, that he will be, hopefully, and I'm saying this in a hopeful manner, not certain, that he'll be a special player for Galway for years to come.
Yeah. Owen Hurley making the point here, like there's players Cork can bring in right now around the senior panel. I don't know how you feel about this idea, Murph, that if you are in a situation because of the circumstance up until now, you couldn't bring Cunningham or Downey potentially into your team, but they're available on the bank holiday weekend, and they could be the difference between winning an All-Ireland or not. Do you jettison these players directly into the team and just parachute them straight into the starting 15?
Yeah, like, I mean, look, I suppose if you phrase it in a certain way, it sounds like, these lads are just coming in and sideswiping a player who's been playing and unfortunately now doesn't get to play. But like, realistically, all these players are now getting to like a fairly cutthroat part of their life in terms of intercounty hurling, in that the best player has to play. That's basically it. And I think if you're part of a team that I suppose is well balanced and understands where you are, you understand the decision has to be made that, these lads are playing at senior level, so they're obviously the best players in the county. Well, we have to play our best team, and I would find that if, let's say, they didn't start them, if they had them and they were available, but they didn't start them, and they played with the under-20 team they have, and it didn't start going their way, and they didn't throw these two players in, I think that's kind of worse than actually just starting them, because it's kind of, that might throw the team out of kilter then, because it nearly sets panic in that, we have to bring these players on now because, we're maybe treading water here. So I would just start them. Like, they're brilliant players. The purpose of this is to go out and win. So if they're available, and you can speak very frankly to the team to say, look, lads, this is about us as a group, as a panel, as a backroom team, go and win in the game. We have to play the best players that are at our disposal. We have the opportunity now to go and play these two players. And I think any young player absolutely be disappointed if you don't play. But I think you can make a peace with it. And if there's a cup in the dressing room at the end of it, I think you kind of go, well, look, I have to improve. But look, we're after winning an under-20 All-Ireland, for example. So I think you do have to play him. I think you do have to start him. And you look, it's just the nature of it. That's just the hand they're dealt. And bottom line, it comes back to you have to play your best team.
Yeah. Interesting question from Conor here, Skehill. If there was a relegation final between Wexford and Waterford, who would win?
You have to say Waterford, don't you?
Yeah.
True to speak at the moment. Like, I suppose the opposition they're facing is perceived to be better at the moment. But just looking at, I suppose, what's Waterford ceiling, what's Wexford ceiling at this very moment, this present time, you'd say Waterford is higher. So if there was a showdown, I'd say they knocked through.
Yeah.
Do you go with that, Murph?
Yeah, absolutely. Like, I mean, I know we've, I suppose we've been fairly cutthroat with Waterford there over the last few weeks, and even look, their own supporters have been as well, but they're not in the same place that Wexford are. Like, and I don't know, is there any consolation in Wexford or Waterford supporters taking that? But I think if Waterford and Wexford go and play tomorrow, I think Waterford win by probably 10 points.
Paul Tierney there wondering about Cormac Egan potentially sticking with hurling. The feeling I get is he will play football at senior level, but he wanted to hurl with this group because quite a few of this team he would have played in both Leinster minor finals with in 2020. Very unique achievement. He's up there with, I think, 3 or 4 Offaly players who have 2 Leinster medals at the old under-21/under-20 medal. So he's now a dual Leinster medal winner, which is remarkable enough. And also Paul Tierney putting out that Dan Ravenhill played quite well. I saw one that I wanted to get Skehill to defend himself on here a second ago. Apparently Skehill has become a cute whore as a pundit, was one of the claims that was being made along the way. That apparently once upon a time you would have been the type of guy, before you got cute, Skehill, who would have been talking about the dark arts and celebrating the idea of killing the game and doing what you have to do to win. Here we go. I think I've got it here now. There we go. This coming in from Emma Moment. In the early days of punditry, before he got cute, Skehill compounded the strategy, or expounded the strategy even, of late game management. Lads, go down, time waste, and if you have to start a fight, you go start a fight. Have you changed, Skehill? Have you got clever here?
Well, I was always clever, Will.
Right.
I was always clever. But no missed moment. I've not changed. I'm absolutely all for it. It's just the degree or how you go about it, I would question at times. And I guarantee you, she's probably pointed at the Tony Kelly where I said the dive, I bet you. You know what I mean? Like, I bet you she is fighting at that. So I'm going to hedge my bets and say she's from Clare. Okay. But no, I'm all for that. Like, I think, again, today there was a passage of play where Nicky Quaid had to go down. I thought he was really sick. So, like, he acted very well, you know. And to be truthfully honest, I thought Cahill Barrett went down. Then he got taken off. Like, so I'm not sure, you know, how much honesty was in that one. But yeah, I'm all for it. You do what you have to do, lads. Like, again, like we were saying, just go back to the minor game for a second, Will. In the second half, there was a point that was for Hawkeye. And it took about a minute to go through, and it was for us. And by God, we needed it at that stage. It was like, someone said it was like a timeout. We needed that break. So that just shows the value in kind of killing the play, killing the run, killing momentum, etc. And away you go. Like, we played I'll say it straight out. We played a club quarter final a few years ago, and we were down 4 or 5 points. There was about 5 minutes left. I turned to our wing back and I just said, start a fight. Just start a fight, I said. And he went out and he started a fight, and it became a ferocious schmozzle. And we drew in extra time. We bet them. We were screwed at that stage, right? At that stage. So we just told the wing back to start a fight, and next thing he just grabbed your man in the headlock. And I know it's probably not great. It's probably frowned upon. But you do what you have to do, folks.
Did the wing back have any hesitation about doing this, or was you just like...
Well, he looked at me.
Okay.
He looked at me, and he was kind of going. He paused. He just went, "Okay." Like the scene in The Town. Do you remember the film The Town?
Yeah,
and the man goes,
yeah.
goes, right, we're going to hurt some people. And he goes, right. The other guy goes, who's driving?
Yeah.
Like, no questions asked. Just go do it.
He's giving away far too much. If there's Galway hurlers watching this right now and Cappy come up later in the year, they know what's coming. Skehill coming out trying to instigate fights. Michael Redden, Tipp kept goalless again, soft free at home against 14 men. Since 2019 League and Championship, they played 10. Limerick have won 8. Tipp have won none. 2 draws, 3 managers in 10 games. Still can't beat Limerick.
Ooh, it's a statement and a half, isn't it?
It is a statement, yeah.
Oh.
But again, we talked about it last week. I mean, Limerick have had the upper hand under Kylie, and they've found a way to win when it comes to these games against Tipperary, and even when they've had to dig in deep. And today, I think the draw is not detrimental to either team. I think they'll both come away
but I think as well,
reasonably happy.
Like if you obviously that was a comparison between Limerick and Tipperary. If you take any other county and do that comparison with Limerick, it's all the same. Do you know what I mean? It's all the same, like because Limerick have been beating everybody. So it's just the gap is closing, right? Though it's closing.
It still does keep in the vein though of, do you know, the Tipperary, I suppose the hoodoo that we're talking about of even Tipperary being ahead, but just losing the second half against John Kiley's Limerick. In that, I think up to today it was 69 points was the difference in second halves over the last like 4 or 5 years. And like Limerick won the second half again today. Like Tipp were up by 3 going into half time, draw game. So like it was the losing in the second half. Now, look, not a major thing, and it wasn't like they were blown out of the water, obviously. But nevertheless, like I was thinking to myself at half time that it'd be a big statement of this Tipperary team if they won the second half. Not even about winning the game, because obviously if they won the second half, they won the game. But it was just that of, you know, they've had so many games with them, and particularly the one down in Páirc Uí Chaoimh where it was just Limerick completely seemed to have a mental hold over them. Yeah. So I thought specifically that 35 minutes today, if Tipperary won the second half, that was a big, I suppose breaking of the trend over the last few years. So look, they didn't do it, but didn't lose the game either. So that in itself is a good thing for Tipp.
Yeah, reasonable question here coming in from Ryan Rooney. Lads, do a live watch along of a provincial or All Ireland final? Possibly. Depends if the guys are working for OTB at the finals, which is
it's actually hilarious. NFL, here we go again, lads. Peyton Manning, his brother, do it. Manning cast.
And they're now.
Have you watched that?
No.
So Peyton Manning, his brother Eli, they do that. Like they bring on a guest and they watch the games. It's actually hilarious. Yeah.
I actually, do you know what? I did watch one of them because there was one that went viral because Peyton Manning called a play from a mile off. He basically said, "What's going to happen here is X, Y, and Z." Now, I didn't understand the finer details of it, but they just said the ability that he called that play, it was like 100-1 before it. Like, but yeah, it is actually a good, it's a good format.
Yeah. Where would the potential be the final be if it's a Tipp Clare final, which it almost certainly will be? I think for sports they keep it in Thurles, but there is arguable Tipp home advantage then will come into play. I don't think that's a good one. If you were Clare, would you agree to play it, Paul, in Thurles, even though like both teams are very familiar with the venue, or would you be giving too much away to Tipperary by playing it there?
I think Clare like Thurles anyway, but I do probably think you have to think of the element of, yeah, absolutely, Thurles is the religious home of Munster Hurling, but maybe just bring it to the Gaelic grounds or to Páirc Uí Chaoimh. We've seen Páirc Uí Chaoimh is an excellent ground for atmosphere as well. So maybe just take it out and take the conversation away from it, because Clare perform absolutely excellent in Thurles the whole time. But nevertheless, I'd be looking for any bit of ground I could take back from Tipperary if I was in the Clare camp at the moment, and that could be one, because you know Tipperary will perform if they're playing in Thurles as well. So maybe, yeah, I'd bring it to the Gaelic grounds or Páirc Uí Chaoimh, but probably the Gaelic grounds maybe is the one that makes a bit more sense. Or bring it to Nolan Park. We'll happily host that.
Oh yeah. Rejuvenate the town, is it?
What will happen now is it'll end up in Cork and people will complain that it's back in Páirc Uí Chaoimh again, but let that debate come up in a few weeks' time.
Was the support between Limerick and Tipp nearly 50-50 today? That's what it felt like on watching television. Would that be fair to say?
I don't know.
It was a good Tipp crowd. Yeah. I think it would have been marginally in Tipperary's favour. I think Liam Cahill rounding the wagons a few weeks ago and saying Tipp supporters have to come out for this game. I think Tipp came out in pretty good numbers. Limerick always travel well though.
Yeah. In recent years, yeah.
Even before, I think winning the All Irelands, they generally had a fairly good attendance at games as well. Keith Scanlon, this is on behalf of the Clare people, effectively. Skehill, you can have this one first. I seem to remember some people said Clare wouldn't even finish in the top 3. Laughing my ass off. Haha. So there's two of them here. You lads thought it was going to be very close in Munster, but you didn't think they were going to qualify. Skehill?
This is hilarious. Like, you know, I love this. See, part of our job here, right, is to try and look into our crystal ball and make judgment calls on evidence we've seen, right? So we said that it'd be awful tight. The margin of separation is 1% less, and the signs are fully on. Clare have been beaten by Tipperary. They've beaten Limerick by a point. They've beaten Cork by a point. You know, so it's so close. Limerick have drawn with Tipperary. We're not talking about hammerings here, like, you know, we're talking about the smallest margin of victory, and that's what's happening. Like Clare Munster final, exactly. So, like, again, slow your roll, win the Munster final, and move on, because it's 25 years, folks. You know what I mean? So,
but also as well, like, you have to look at the point of view that you scroll up through the comments there, Will, you'll find Munster Hurling, it's brilliant. There's a puck of the ball between all 5 teams. Scroll down then, and we're getting given out to for getting it wrong that we managed to not pick Tipperary 3. Like, you can't have the same argument of saying, Jesus, nothing separating the teams of Munster, and then saying we're all clowns because we don't get to it.
I'm fully expecting stones and tomatoes and cabbage to come in the flipping window. I mean, now it's so much.
It's like, regardless nearly of what we say in this podcast, you're nearly going to get abuse saying, how dare you say that against my team? Like, you know, unfortunately, our crystal balls were broken at the start of the year. We didn't know exactly what way it was going to play out. But
well, here's the thing, Murph. Have Clare been a little bit better than you thought they were going to be?
Yeah, like, I mean, again, it goes back to, let's say, the power rankings, for example. Like if you're big in the power rankings, it's over a consistent period of time. And you look at a team and you say, consistently, is there things to point at here to say that this team is headed in the right direction? Could you look at Clare's league and say they were heading this direction? No, the performances they're doing at the moment, they were not doing during the league. But you could say that for Tipperary. Tipperary were hurling really well during the league. So there's measurables to look at. How Clare went out of the championship last year, you look at that and you go, you know, was it all heart? Were they just hurling with all heart? Did they have enough of a panel to support a sort of a run like that? So you're trying to look at the measurables that were there. And if Clare went into the league and performed, you know, really well, and like, go back, let's say, look at Limerick and Clare in the league match. Was it a Saturday evening in the Gaelic grounds? Horrendous game. Clare were absolutely terrible. You know, you can't look at that and say, but I guarantee they will be top of the table by the end of this. You just can't. You know, if you can only work with what you're looking at. And like we were saying with the power rankings of, do we take Limerick off it? I do think there's an argument absolutely at the moment, because now we've seen a few weeks of where other teams have consistently went really well, and Limerick are potentially now going to lose their Munster crown. So now, absolutely, the conversation is there. But, you know, 6 weeks ago, you couldn't say that. You absolutely could not say that. So, like, I mean, at the end of the day, you know, you roll the dice on these things, and you from what you can see in front of you and what teams have, you try and make a calculation on this. But the beauty, particularly of the Munster Championship at the moment, is that everybody who has predicted something has been bitten during this Munster Championship. Everybody. Like, you mean, there's been, like, both of us, I went with Limerick today, Skehill, you went with Tipp. We're both wrong. It was a draw match. None of us even thought of going for a draw, you know. Yeah. So it's so hard. It's just so hard to try and pick it. And I would always make the argument then that if you're in that situation where you're saying that people are getting things so wrong, that's probably because you have a really good championship on your hands.
Yeah, there's a couple of people who were also asking about predictions for next week. Now, we will get onto that in a little bit. There's some interesting ones coming in along the way too. Owen Downey here making a very fair point, is the future looks very bright for Clare Hurling. Munster Senior Hurling Final, as well as the All-Ireland Minor Hurling Final. Their 20s have been competitive this year too. I think we mentioned this last week, Skehill, the fact that it's remarkable how quickly Clare have turned around from a doom and gloom situation. And everyone was talking about their training field. They were talking about finances within the county board. They were talking about potentially there could be slippage in some of the underage results that they had. But right now, on what we've seen so far from Clare this summer, they'd have to be probably the happiest Munster county with the way their teams are going from minor right through to senior right now. Yeah,
I think so. Like, I think also like with the way the schools are playing as well. You know what I mean? They're hotly competitive in that also. But like when you're producing positive results on the pitch, everything else becomes, you know, irrelevant. You know, like it's when things are going wrong, like you see now in Waterford at the minute, that every other little issue that's going on in the county, whether it be, you know, in a school or in juvenile structures, etc., becomes, you know, heightened. Like it's there's a magnifying glass in every little move that's been done, or every issue that's relevant at that time. Whereas in the Clare at the minute now, the sole focus is on the production on the pitch, and the signs are on. They're producing. So like I know obviously they didn't make the under-20 final, but they made the Munster final. They were seriously competitive. I thought they should. To be honest, I thought they should have won the game when I was watching it. But again, it's not doom and gloom. They're rolling in the right direction. And it's just again, it's like a collective group have come together. And it's like if you watch the three teams play, I think it's so surprising they're all playing kind of very, very similar. They're all playing the same kind of systematic approach with the way they're defending and attacking. I found it unusual because again, if you look at Galway minors, 20s and seniors, three of the teams aren't playing the same. But it's like Clare are all playing the same. They're adopting the same kind of system. So it just looks like it's a collective approach, both on the pitch and off the pitch. So it looks good for them.
Yeah. Darragh O'Connor, was there much of a scrap at the end of the Limerick Tipp game? I was watching TV. I didn't have the sound up because I was working at the time. So we were kind of chatting with the lads a bit earlier. Now, Declan Laffin did address this. This is what Declan Laffin, the Tipperary selector, had to say, because neither Liam Cahill nor John Kiely spoke to the written press afterwards. But Declan Laffin came out to speak on behalf of Tipperary. And he spoke about a couple of things that have come up in the comments too, which was Tipperary stopping the goal chances, which were a problem in the first two games. And then he talks about the bit of argy-bargy after full time as well.
A lot of criticism of the defence after the first two games, Declan, but they tightened up a lot today.
Yeah, I was trying to remember inside before it came out, was their goal chances. Probably Garone or Cahill Barrett maybe recovered one situation that looked really risky, and there was another maybe half chance. I think we probably had one maybe early in the second half, the one that Jake flashed over the bar. I think it went to Hawkeye. I thought maybe it spilled away from Mark Keogh previous. If it hadn't spilled away, I think he might have got in. Look, we're delighted with that obviously, but look, you're always hoping for improvements, and it's still early days involving us, like, so we'll take it from there.
Your own company got the difference, and you never had any doubt
look, took balls of steel to stand up there after the last day, and kudos to him, fair play to him. I'm really proud of him, and tremendous for him personally, I think.
It got a little bit feisty after the final whistle. I've never seen Noel kind of as angry. I don't know, was something said or...
I honestly don't know what happened, but look, that's hurling. It gets emotional. All right, thanks guys.
There you go. So Declan Laffin, understandably, was kind of sidestepping that a little bit. I don't know. It looked a bit more kind of pushing rather than any kind of striking going on. But look, it goes to show the rivalry is still there. Go on.
But like Noel McGrath, like knowing him personally, like he's a very, very calm individual. I've never seen him that way before, ever. So something was definitely said. I'd love to know what was said.
I want to ask both of you about the idea. Paul, I'll come to you first on it, about Limerick having to potentially go the long way around. It's going to be tough on Offaly or Carlow if they're to draw Limerick in the next round, if Limerick were to navigate Cork in the next game. But if in theory Limerick were to go preliminary quarter-final and then they've got that much longer route to get back round to an All-Ireland final, could that actually turn out to be not a bad thing for Limerick if Limerick aren't quite finding their form yet?
Yeah, it could be the space where Limerick enter into to actually just find their form. And then, we saw Clare win the 2013 All-Ireland from that position, we in 2012, after Galway bet us well, we entered into the quarter-final, played against Limerick actually in the quarter-final. And again, I suppose that Limerick team obviously didn't have the same cut and trust of this current team. We kind of stuttered and started at the start of that game, didn't really get our form going, but towards the end of the game, we hit a good patch for the last 20 minutes, and we carried that over into the semi-final and against Tipp. So I think if Limerick do go that route, I think it allows them to step out of all the hype. They actually kind of go wayside stage for a little bit, and people start focusing on, the provincial finals now, and who's going to win this. Limerick go and start preparing. The standard will drop a little bit for them. They'll have a chance then to, I suppose, get that mojo back into their game and get that bit of flow back into it. And again, the word I said, swagger, get that swagger in their backs up and come back in then, and face a team who is full of confidence, who want to put them down. But Limerick have had a bit of time to prepare. I do think it would suit them. Now, the only thing that you'd have to temper that with, and John Kiely and Paul Kinnerk, I'm sure, would be excellent at, is that if they do go in through that, is managing how you don't kill their confidence by saying, you deserve to be here, while at the same time kind of saying that, well, look at, if the shirt fits, you wear it. We deserve to be here because we just didn't hurl well enough. So you're trying to strike that balance where you're building up someone's confidence, where also, I suppose, making them realise that, we've dropped our standards here as well. So I think it could suit them. And from playing through that position before, I certainly know that maybe it was better off that, we got our kick in the arse earlier in the championship before it was too late.
Yeah, don't listen to me for a second, Skehill, but in 2018, Limerick were third in the group and came through that way to win the All-Ireland that year. So it wouldn't be strange to some of this group to have to go the longer route anyway.
I would listen to.
That's fair. But I'm just saying it's happened before. This wouldn't be new territory.
No, as Murph was talking, because weren't Cork in the Munster final in 18, were they?
In Munster final in 18.
They must have been, because they went straight to a semi-final and they played Limerick.
Was Cork and Clare, was it? Did Cork beat Clare? Am I right in saying that?
Cork were definitely champions anyway, because Cork were in the semi-final, weren't they?
I thought they
played Limerick as a qualifier, I think.
Yeah. It wasn't Tipp or yeah. It was Cork beat Clare.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Are you distracted from the point now that we're talking about 2018, Scott?
Yeah, the minute 18 mentioned it,
you just started talking about who was in the Munster final.
Murphy, you are wise to my tricks now. In this moment, I'm still a cute whore, but Murphy has been caught.
I believe that's filibustering technically. But anyway, right, go on. We'll let you off because you won't up at 2018. You can take this one then, because this is a goalkeeper-based question coming in from Paul Tierney on the Facebook. Clare mixing it around with keepers with Foudy, Quilligan. Clare under-20 keeper looks as good as both. Would you fast forward him or wait? Just to come on that point, and not just to get away from the Clare point, because I think at this stage that Quilligan is probably their first choice for the rest of the year. But Rhys Skelly obviously came up at the Tipperary goalkeeper, where they've switched him in now that he's got fit. We've actually seen quite a bit of goalkeeper rotation and goalkeeper changes during the championship here, Skehill.
Yeah, I think it's probably down to the importance of strategy and what your goalkeeper, what his strengths are. So like, if you look at the puck-out strategy today with Tipperary, possession was 9/10 to the law. Like, if you could maintain possession against Limerick here and have the ball, it was suited towards Tipperary style of play for the forwards. And like, some of his puck-outs today were fabulous. And like, if you enter a high risk, high reward type of game, whereby you're pushing those margins, you're going for those tight angles, those tight lanes, there's going to be one or two that are going to get cut out. It's just look, it's reality. It's top level sport, and you're going to get like a team as good as Limerick. You're going to cut you out every now and then. But I thought Shelley did very well. He did really, really well. And some of his puckouts were pinpoint. There was one in particular, just got over Lynch by about 2 inches.
I remember that one. The second
just
half
got over. Yeah, I was looking at it going, oh geez, yeah. But when it lands, it's so satisfying because you know Lynch is jumping as high as he can to get it. He can't get it, so that means you've measured it to perfection. In the Clare situation, to answer that person's question, like, no, you don't fast forward to 20 goalie. You bring them in and you expose them to the whole situation for a period of time, and then see if they're able to cut it, because the chalk and cheese, the two teams are way different in terms of caliber and just even the difficulty mentally. But Quilligan himself, like, I'd say he'd probably be disappointed with his performance today. Like, I thought his puckouts were pretty okay, but a couple of goals, I'd say he looked at it and go, geez, he could have done better, especially on the...
So what's in his mind on the Patrick Horgan one? Because we were kind of WhatsApping at the time when that goal went in, and my first thought is you got to protect your front post.
Yeah, the protecting the front post is probably, you know, that's been a historical thought for years. That's been in soccer, that's been in every sport you see, right? But since the ball is traveling so quick, and trust me, I know when the player strikes the ball, the human body can't react as fast. So we have to you process it mentally, right? The ball is going this direction, and then you react with your arms or your muscles, right? Can't react that fast. So there is some times where you'll see goalkeepers will introduce an element of guesswork. He's guessing, okay, I'm taking a chance here, he's going to go this side, and as I'm falling, remember I was saying to you before with Owen Murphy making a save, when you're falling, it's much easier to make a save than it is when you're standing. Do you know what I mean? Yeah. So unfortunately for Iver, he guessed. He put all his chips on Horgan going across his body, heading into the bottom left-hand corner as Iver signed the goals, and Horgan outsmashed him and put it in the front side.
Is your instinct as a goalkeeper, because obviously if this is a split-second decision you have to make, when he sees Horgan and the way that Horgan is shaping up and he's shortening his grip, I'm assuming he's thinking that Horgan's going right across me.
Yeah, because
that's the reason he moves.
Real top-level forwards, like there's only been there's a few that do it, and like TJ comes to mind, Joe, Tony Kelly did it today with the penalty, Horgan can do it, whereby they can shape the body in one direction but put the ball in another direction. I'd say Owen Cody can definitely do it as well. So like you're looking for signals. You're looking for any kind of signal at all to give me just a little inch. And so Horgan probably shaped across and then slotted. He did, because he slotted it low. He kind of backspinned it to the ground. You know what I mean? Which means he didn't get full power in it. He just placed it lovely, and that was some finish. And I if I'm coaching forwards and they're in that opportunity, like, or in that situation, you'd be saying hit for the inner post, because the goalkeeper never expects it. You know what I mean? But like, even for Iver, like the two goals, the one that Cahill had gone, I thought both Horgan's goal and Cahill's goal, he needs to close them down, because you're a sitting duck, lads. Like there's 21 foot for that person to aim at. Like, so if you stand there, let them walk in 5 or 6 yards, you're done. You're cooked. So just go out and tackle them or spread yourself like the Schmeichel like pose and try and increase your probability of making a save. So I'd say he look at that and probably grits his teeth a small bit.
Yeah, I'd strongly recommend if anyone wants to hear more about Rhys Shelley and why he's come into the Tipperary team and why they played him before he got injured, have a listen to Anthony Nash from last Friday's Off the Ball, which is up on our YouTube. He coached him at UL this year and said his distribution is a huge reason why. And he thinks Tipperary may well have started him ahead of Barry Hogan earlier in the year if he hadn't picked up an injury. That apparently, like, Cahill is just a huge fan and he feels now is the time to actually develop and get him game time, and he didn't feel it was a risk at all putting him in. Like, what a nice situation UL had where they've got Tipperary's championship starting goalkeeper and the Dean Mason, the All-Ireland winning goalkeeper with Ballyhale on their books at the same time. Not a bad option to have at third level for the Fitzgibbon this season. So, yeah, pretty nicely set up. The lads, the other two games in Leinster, I don't think we need to dwell on them because of the nature of the victories, but it seems Gal today, Conor Cooney gets 7 points, does a lot of damage. There was a point in that game where Galway had lost a couple of frontline players to injury inside the first 10 or 11 minutes and Conal Cunning scores the goal, and you're thinking, are Antrim going to make this a bit sticky? But then even by half time, I think Galway were getting 18, 19 points up. So that seems to me like a fairly professional performance from Galway today.
Yeah, like I do find even playing these games sometimes like they're hard to manage expectation both in the group and outside of it. Like, because if you hammer the team, Asher was expected of you, and if it's a close game, then geez, you're not going well. This is the kind of, so it's a kind of a poison chalice to a certain degree playing teams where you think there's a perceived good from talents. But I just think they went about their business economically, if you ask me. The players I want to see. Conor Cooney didn't play the last game, obviously against Westmeath. He wasn't in the squad, so and he probably wasn't overly content with his performance the week against Kilkenny. So for him, to come back and kind of shoot the lights up pretty well, like, good for him. We need him going well. And look, I hope the injuries aren't too serious, but look, it was just go in, get the job done, and move on, lads. That's exactly. And I know it sounds very, even somewhat degrading, but I don't mean it to be that way. Get in, get job done. Hopefully no injuries. Move on to the next.
Yeah, not wanting to get away from 2018 entirely. Patrick Coleman is back in. Can you ask Cahill, does he remember 2018 after being hit by the ball?
It was the knee inside of the head. I don't. Yeah. You see, it's a strange one. I would have spoken about this before to someone. Like, it could have been Arthur to do with it. So, like, I watched the game back, right, and it's very, very kind of surreal because I don't remember the incident. You know what I mean? Of the second half. Like, I don't remember that, but I'm watching it, so it happened. Do you get me? It's kind of hard to explain. I'm looking and going, yeah, that was me. I can see myself. Do you know what I mean? But I don't remember being partaking in it at all. But I remember the first half. So it doesn't make sense. So yeah, strange one.
Yeah. Shane Power. Will, in theory, could Adam Screeney, Dan Ravenhill, etc. play in the Joe McDonagh final? They could. No theory about it. I think Cochter, if he's fit, will be on the panel for the senior team. Charlie Mitchell will play and will probably play the weekend afterwards. There's no reason they couldn't be brought up. The only thing is, with two of the lads you've mentioned there, and Adam Screeney and Dan Ravenhill, they're only just 17. I think Dave Ravenhill might be just turned 18 at this stage. They're in their first year out of minor. Be a big ask to put them straight in for a Joe McDonagh Cup final. But in theory, yeah, they could play and still be eligible to play in the final the week afterwards. And the 7-day rule doesn't count. If the final had been the next day or Monday, they can still play in the Joe McDonagh and play in the 20s. Something I've said 100 times. Loads of people tweeted me about it during the week when Offaly had the request to move the game and Cork had no problem moving it. I think it's wrong. I think you should either have a block on adult plus under 20 with a 7-day rule or not have it at all. And I suppose somebody probably meant well, Murph, along the way, where I'd say the reason they left the graded competitions in was that they're probably thinking some of these teams will be stuck for a pick, so therefore let them play 20s and we're not going to take away from panels that might be stretched. But then you get a team where there is a panel that's available for seniors, and it's not in the spirit of the rule that you're allowed playing the McDonagh but not in the senior competitions.
Yeah, it's a strange one. Like, it's hard to know, is it the case that was the thinking behind it, or maybe that it was just a loophole that was not catered for when it was being implemented. It's a strange one to know because, again, like, we reference certain players who aren't eligible for their under 20s, but then, they're playing for their adult team. But then other players, just through the nature of, as you're saying, the loophole, or maybe it's intended that they can play for either or, and they get to keep their foot in both camps. So it's a strange one, and I haven't seen the reason as to why that was the thought process. But like I said, maybe it wasn't. Maybe it was just that a loophole happened and they didn't they didn't foresee something like this happening.
I do like this one from Danny Mack, where Danny has asked, are we getting to a point now where this is going to clash with the Sunday game? We've got a couple of minutes left. I mean, by all means, get a few more questions in for the lads. I'm going to ask them to predict next week's match as well. And it is, and I'm always ballsy. If you're going to say, Dave Mack, that's ballsy by me to go up against the Sunday game. We definitely have a few minutes left before we go off and watch them. But Skehill, hold on. What's this now? Does he want an I Shot JR t-shirt? Skehill reminds me of Tom from Father Ted. Do not start this River Power. He has still not watched Father Ted. This is a spoiler. Would you believe my own dog did that to me? Doesn't it look like a face? That's totally lost. Murph and I are going to laugh at Tom and some of the stuff he comes out with. Skehill is going to stand there and go, what? So if you haven't heard River Power, and I'm sure you already have because you're a regular contributor to these live chats, he hasn't seen Father Ted yet. So by all means, we'll get him a t-shirt,
I can't tell if that's an insult or a compliment.
Yeah, probably not a compliment.
Judging by your face, Murph, it's an insult.
I really want Skehill to meet Showtime Murph. I'm hoping that one of the commenters is actually Showtime Murph, because Showtime Murph is always in our Instagram questions. So Showtime Murph might well be here and may well be watching this back. Surely it's time not for Skehill to meet Showtime Murph, but for Murph to meet Showtime Murph at some point during this. But hey, we will head along and watch the Sunday game in a few moments' time. But I do want to ask the guys about the week coming up, because this is an interesting setup. So I've got the Munster Hurling Championship table in front of me at the moment. Clare, 4 played, 6 points, feet up on the beach for a couple of weeks before the Munster final. They know they're in it. Tipperary, I think, are very much set to join them, because Tipp are playing Waterford in the last round. Waterford can't qualify. Waterford no points in 3. Do either of you disagree with that, firstly, that Tipperary aren't going to beat Waterford? Because I saw a few people earlier on in the chat going, maybe Davy's got something there. Maybe the Waterford Hurlers would like to get one over on Liam Cahill. Do either of you think that Waterford are going to beat Tipp?
No.
I tell you, I was in Cusack Park last year, Will, and when Waterford played Clare.
Yeah.
And Clare bet the shite of them. Do you know what I mean? And because if you're a Tipperary camp now and you've something heavily on the line, you're going to go balls out. You're going to go balls out, and just Waterford won't be able to match that intent or emotion, or just they won't be able to reach the requirement. I suppose to match Tipperary, and that's a big one in itself. And they're playing for nothing, lads. So you hope they put up a good game and play for a bit of pride and try and get some sort of positivity back into the camp, but it's hard to see.
Yeah, it's very hard to see it. You can't, considering Waterford have had so many reasons to put in good performances this year, and for it to come down to that, they might put in a good performance to maybe push it up to Liam Cahill. I think absolutely not, because if you haven't had motivation this year to go out and hurl in the first place, that's a thin enough thing to motivate you. So no, I don't see it happening.
Yeah. All right. Well, I'm not even going to disagree with that. Then that means beautifully Cork against Limerick. And I apologise last week, by the way, for those. A couple of people got onto us in the comments who were like, you never asked them for their predictions for the games of the weekend. So I literally had to go WhatsApp you and reply in the comments. So this time around, we shall not forget. You guys need to make those predictions that can be used against you at a later date. Skehill, who's coming through Cork against Limerick? And I want a winner. I don't want you to say this is going to be a draw and a scoring difference. I want a definitive who's going to win here.
Limerick.
Why?
Oh, Jesus. Here we go.
Oh, Jesus.
Why are they going to win? I just, as gas as this sounds, they have to. They have to win, and I think they will. They're coming at home, and I'd say their supporters, their crew are going to get around the table and shove them handless. And I just think they're being slightly disrespected to a certain degree, that everyone thinks they're finished and they're wrote off, and certain lads aren't playing well. That happens. Teams ebb and flow. Players come, their form goes up and down, but at the end of the day, nobody's putting Limerick away. They're just not putting away. If they lost by 7 or 8 points today, different story, but they didn't. They drew away in Thurles. You know what I mean? As we said, they only got beaten by a point by Clare, who everyone perceives to be the best team in Munster at the moment. So it's not as if they're gone miles away. Cork, they worry me at times, lads, with regard to how they slip out of games for periods. And I think if you slip out of a game against Limerick where you go 6 or 7 or 8 points down, they won't let you back. Because I don't think they allowed the penetration that the teams that Cork have played recently for goals. So it's hard to see how Cork are going to come up with 2, 3, 4 goals against the Limerick side that don't generally concede that many chances. So it's if the game goes that way, which signs are on it has against top level competition, that then it could result in 5-6 points.
Yeah. A couple of Westmeath supporters have been liked by a couple of Westmeath hurlers as well. Just dedicate your full pod tonight to Westmeath. Oh, well, look, we gave them a a fairly good run, I think, along the way. I think that was very, very fair for them. River Power makes a reasonable point. Murph, before I ask you your prediction, will Hegarty start against Cork?
Yeah, hard to know. Only John Cahill and Paul Kinnerk, I think, know maybe what's going on with Gerard Hegarty not having his influence. Wouldn't surprise me if he didn't. It wouldn't surprise me at all. I think Kylie's very capable. You see Cian Lynch coming off today. Like, other managers would leave him on and see he might create something might work out. John Kylie isn't that manager. He's proactive in his decisions. So it may be a situation where they might rejig things around and you might see likes of Peter Casey starting. But I don't see that, because Gerard Hegarty only kind of provides something that very few players provide, like this raw power that he provides. And if he does, if things do click for him, like we saw things not clicking for Tony Kelly earlier on this year, and when it does click, you can't stop him. If it clicks for Gerard Hegarty, that could be the cornerstone in which Limerick wins. So I don't think he won't start him. I think, Kylie goes again with the half forward line that we see of Lynch, Hegarty and Tom Morrissey. But maybe there might be a few choice words said during the week. It might be the whole thing of a kick up the hole, or maybe an arm around the shoulder. We don't know. But I think they will start Hegarty. But like I said, to go back to it, if the question's even being asked, there has to be an element there if there's a chance where he wouldn't start.
So who wins, Murph?
Limerick. I'm going to go with Limerick again. I was looking back at it there, like just come on. Sure, I'm getting to it, for fuck's sake. Again, Limerick's back is kind of to the wall now. Like, you look at Cork today, had a really good influence on the game, got into it there in the first quarter, and then they scored 2 points, in the last 15 minutes before half time, things like that. I find with Limerick at the moment, even when they're playing bad, like if you took your eyes off the score, just weren't looking at score, Tipperary were hurling really well today and getting really good scores. And then you look up at the score and you go, Limerick are only a point behind here. Like, they just stay in the game. They're like RoboCop. Since we're on the night of mentioning movies, they just don't disappear. You can't get them off you, So Limerick, yeah. But like Limerick, I just feel I agree with Skehill in that people are writing them off a little too soon. Like, a drawn match and losing by a point. Cork absolutely, and have proven in the past that they're capable of beating Tipperary or beating Limerick. But I think the question mark is over Cork at the moment. What do Cork bring to the situation? And I just think Limerick, when the gun is to the head, they're going to go, listen, we want to stay in this championship and progress on and put our best foot forward. And at the moment, I'd have to say Limerick.
Shawnee K, you wouldn't be alone. I think a lot of people felt that way. You said written off a decade to Limerick, but now looking like 3 or 4 teams have caught up with them and they've gone back to the pack. Now, for the neutral, that is the best news possible. As much as I've enjoyed the brilliance of this team, if teams are catching up with them and that danger is there, and there was a point during that game where I thought Cork might actually turn it around against Clare, and you're thinking Tipp could knock Limerick out of the championship. That type of danger that's there, and the danger going into next weekend against Cork, is probably good for Limerick and good for the neutral. I would agree with some people though, Skehill, that I'd like to see Limerick lose in a knockout game if they're going to be beaten, as opposed to, it wouldn't have been great if they'd just gone out today in the round robin.
Yeah,
I want to see someone beat them and beat them.
I hear what you're saying. Beat them when it's absolutely everything's on the line. I suppose if Cork did beat Clare today, that would have been the case. Which is, I suppose again, see, we've grown accustomed to Limerick facing down every challenge they faced. So when teams come at different game plans, different types of system or personnel, we've always said that Limerick have always had the answer. And look, I suppose right now they're probably looking for the answer at the minute, and the answer is certainly in their personnel, that they have to produce the goods a bit better than what they've been doing in the last couple of weeks. And we keep pointing to the Hegartys and Lynch this world, and like if they get rolling again, and like there was a question there, I think you asked Murph about does Hegarty start, and like for me he does, like, because like who is like what's going on in his head right now? Like he just wants to get hurling, because when you make an error, let's say, or you don't play well, your initial reaction is I want to play again, I want to fix it, I want to right the wrong. So I guarantee you in his head he's saying, right, give me another shot. And so when they're playing next week, he's itching to start. And like if you're going to get no one's going to get himself out of this mess. I hate to use, I know this sounds a bit strong, as only himself. So if he just strikes a point or two, God knows what he'd do, against Cork next week. So yes, I think he's starting. He's too valuable not to start, and he requires too much attention and might open up something for others. But yeah, like if you're going to beat Limerick, like you have to knock them out. And if they come through third place and go on the opposite side, like that's tough. that puts more importance in guys on who plays who wins the Leinster final. Do you know what I mean? Like, don't get me wrong, if you're going to win the Ireland, you have to beat everyone. But like, if let's say Kilkenny and let's say Kilkenny potentially lose and they're into that side of the draw, it's tricky business. Do you know what I mean? Have to go that route, yeah.
Yeah, and for any Carlow viewers or listeners that we have to the pods, hopefully Saturday is a sporting game, but I hope the coin toss, if Limerick get through, falls on your side as opposed to Offaly's to have to play them. So the 2 games in Munster this coming Sunday, then you've got Limerick against Cork at the Gaelic Grounds, 4 o'clock, same time, Semple Stadium is Tipp against Waterford. The TV game is going to be the one with everything at stake, which is Limerick against Cork. Leinster Senior Championship, how it stands going into the final round. Galway are in a very strong position to qualify because their scoring difference as much as anything else, plus 59. They play against Dublin at Croke Park, knowing that avoiding defeat will 100% put them into the Leinster final. But even if they're defeated, because of the scoring situation, it looks very likely that Galway will qualify anyway. Now, the mix in all this is what happens in Kilkenny against Wexford. That game probably holds the key to 2 positions within the group. Kilkenny know they're in the Leinster final 100% if they win or if they draw. If they lose, then they're at the whim of what happens in the Dublin against Galway game. Wexford now can't qualify. We know that Dublin are into the knockout stages, so minimum they're going to an All-Ireland preliminary quarter-final. But the situation at the bottom, Wexford on 2, Westmeath on 2, but Westmeath ahead of Wexford on head-to-head. Antrim are going to have to get a result on the final day if they're to stay up. And if Antrim were to win and Kilkenny were to win, Wexford go into the Joe McDonagh, which I don't think any of us really expected. But Skehill, your old boss, Micheál Donoghue, would be really happy that Dublin have now got themselves into the knockout stages, and this game against Galway will feel like a literal free hit against his old side on Sunday afternoon.
Yeah, I'd say he'll go hammer and tongs, to be honest. I know they're guaranteed, let's say, I was going to call it promotion, they're guaranteed to exit the group, but like, I know Micheál, he's an extreme competitor, and like I'd say, I saw bits of the game against Kilkenny, and it didn't look hectic, to be honest. I could be wrong there, no more. You probably saw more of it than I did, but it didn't look hectic. So I'd say he's probably got a bit to work on. So if he's to go places, he wanted to get his starters back on the pitch next week and see can they improve. And I suppose right now you can nearly look at the year for Dublin and say, look, it's been successful. It's been successful so far, because to get out of the group was kind of a box tick that I said that they needed to do this year for it to be a successful year. And sure, who knows what happens after that? You just never know in knockout hurling, as we said ourselves. Like again, look at Laois toppling them last 3 or 4 years ago. So anything can happen. So yeah, good for him.
Yeah. Murph, how do you see Dublin and Galway going then?
Yeah, look, I just think Galway will just have far too much from here, to be honest. Like, even looking at Galway with Antrim over the weekend and just went about their business, they're very much focused on controlling their own ship and just getting into a Leinster final. Like Kilkenny, Dublin, looking at Dublin there, I mean, there was fits and spurts where Dublin got a few good scores and stuff, but they never really, like, I know they took off in an early lead, but they never looked like really winning the game. And at the moment, they don't look like they're potent enough up front to actually go and beat Galway. So I just don't see it happening. And I think Croke Park anyway will suit Galway. I know we said that, obviously when you actually break down the numbers, it suits Dublin really as well, considered compared to Parnell Park. But I just think where both teams are at the moment, it's very much like Tipperary going playing Waterford. Galway want to control their own ship at the moment, and they'll just go, look, we have too much for Dublin, both on paper and in reality. We have too much for Dublin, so let's go out here and beat Dublin. And I just can't see it coming from anywhere else for Dublin overturn Galway.
Yeah, Gary Farrell wondering, would not be head-to-head for Dublin and Kilkenny. In the circumstance where the teams have finished on 7 points, you'd be looking at a Dublin win against Galway and Kilkenny losing against Wexford. So then 3 teams will be on equal points. They'll all be on 7. And as things stand, and I have in front of me here somewhere, Galway have got the best scoring difference on 59, Kilkenny on 45, and Dublin on 9. And that's kind of why I said at the outset that it would take a remarkable scoring difference change as well. Like, Dublin would have to absolutely scutch Galway with the way things stand if they were to...
Points.
Yeah, that's why I say Galway have got like a foot and a half into the final at this stage. Yeah, if 2 teams are level at the end, it goes head to head, but if there's more than 2 teams, it goes to scoring difference. And that's why we've said a few times, that's why Galway have to turn around and just beat everyone in front of them to get the best possible scoring difference. Skehill, we heard Paul already say Wexford, Kilkenny will go all out to try and beat them, and he thinks Kilkenny will win. Do you expect Kilkenny to win, or is there a miraculous 2 years in a row to Wexford? Because remember, the fixtures fell similarly last season, and Wexford were held to a draw by Westmeath, and then they beat Kilkenny on the last day to qualify. Is there a possible kick in Wexford to beat Kilkenny on Sunday afternoon?
There's definitely a kick. I think, again, when I was just speaking about Gareth Hegarty and what he needs to do to get back on track is to start playing again, keep playing, and no more than Wexford. I guarantee you those players in that group, lads, are disgusted. They're going home just disgusted, and they're extremely disappointed, and they want to right the wrongs. So I think there will be a kick. It's just how long can the kick last for? So if the first 2 minutes, to say if Kilkenny weather the storm, call it weather the kick, right? And next thing Kilkenny are on top, that the power of the kick will go very fast. Do you know what I mean? So I just think Kilkenny are too strong up front. I can't see how a situation how Wexford outshoot Kilkenny. And Kilkenny, like, look at the scores. Like, if you look at like Billy Ryan, Mossy Keown, Owen Curry, TG Reid, like just Adrian Mullen, they're just popping up, let's say, and they're spreading the load. There's no one man carrying all the load. They're all spreading pretty well. And it's like, so if you marshal one guy, 5 other guys to stand up. If you marshal 2 guys, so they just have a really good spread. Can't see how they're going to outscore Kilkenny. So I think, unfortunately, in my view, the writing's on the wall for Wexford, and all they can do is put in the best performance possible and pray to God Antrim don't topple Westmeath.
Well played by Patrick Coleman. The only kick he believes in KK there is KK kicking Wexford. So, yeah. I don't know. I mean, Westmeath and Antrim, I don't know how to call it, because I think this is one, if I was on the Westmeath and Antrim backroom teams, I'd be keeping Twitter open, or I'd have one of my backroom team keeping an eye on what's happening in the Kilkenny game, because bizarrely enough, if you're Westmeath, it might be advantageous to lose to Antrim if Kilkenny are ahead against Wexford. It's kind of a bizarre situation.
Yeah, or they might do what Kilkenny Wexford did to us years ago and group together and knock us out.
The little violin is back out again here.
If I was down your pitch that day, I'd have smashed the violin off you.
Right, we're going to go in a minute, Paul, but do you believe in any of Skell's extreme Galway propaganda here and claims he's made against you that some kind of backhanded deals were cut on that day?
Jesus, I tell you one thing, as someone who was playing that day now, if there was backhanded deals, I wasn't in on it anyway. We were frantically doing our best to try and win that match.
I just got an image of Cody and Fitzy meeting in a dark room somewhere, right?
Yeah. No, I just remember at the end of that one, because I think we were safe anyway. We were in the Leinster final, and because we were going off, and obviously ye were then, after realising that ye were out. But then, since it was down in Wexford Park, the Wexford crowd realised they're now in the Leinster final. So there was kind of chaos everywhere, but we were just walking off the pitch going, look, we're in the Leinster final, okay, grand, But, job done. I always remember seeing the pictures of ye up in Parnell Park finding out while you're on the pitch. I was going, Jesus, that's not easy, like trying to digest that of an evening that you're suddenly out, like,
Is that what you said, yeah? Is that what you said? I know what you said. You said,
up your hose, Cahill. That's what I said.
Well, look, your fate was in your own hands that day. So, so this Sunday, then you've got Wexford Kilkenny, Wexford Park. All these games at 2:00. Dublin against Galway Croker, which is a doubleheader with the football Dublin Roscommon. Westmeath against Antrim, 2:00. So relegation and the Leinster final still on the line going into those last round of games. You've got the Joe McDonagh Cup final is on Saturday, which is Offaly against Carlow Croke Park at 4:45. And yeah, I put my perfectly neutral hat on for that one, and I have no idea who's going to win. Carlow are coming in with very strong form, but Offaly were good up until the final day, and we didn't get to see the two teams at full strength because, Offaly decided to try a few players out ahead of the final, as was their wont. And it's created plenty of drama, I think, between Laois and Offaly in the week or so since. Lads, I've enjoyed the live pod format again. I think there's courting even going on in the comments at this stage. That's how it's gone.
It's getting out of hand,
yeah. People may well have gone off to the Sunday game to watch it at this stage, especially with the games that we've just had. But sure, look, if people could leave us a like or a comment underneath the video as well, it really helps out. We've had a few really engaged audiences around the videos in recent weeks, so that's why we decided to go live for these 2 weeks. So we were live this week. We're going to be live again around 8 p.m. next Sunday to take in the end of the provincial championships in both Leinster and Munster. If you can leave us a like or potentially leave us a review if you're listening to us in audio form, that helps out massively along the way as well. Helps to push us out to a new audience. We're definitely seeing new people pop up in these live chats all the time as well. So welcome aboard, and hopefully we've got you for the rest of the summer. Murph, Skehill, thanks a million.
Sound, lads. Talk to you.
Cheers,
to all you lovely listeners, we'll see you at 8:00 next week.
OTB's The Hurling Pod.
With Board Gosh Energy.
Hurling, it's anyone's game.